Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson, and a mystery guest. It was a mystery guest. There was a third box. Don't get too excited. There's no Mike Renner showing up. There's nobody. It's just Sam and I today. But today it's wide receiver rankings, Sam. Yesterday, QB rankings. Go check it out if you have not yet. Today we break down the plethora of wide receivers in this draft class. How you doing, man?
Good. How's it going? What's what do we got going for Check the Mug today?
Oh, check the mug. Get a little mug check. I'm Old Faithful, man.
Old Faithful.
Yeti, Sport Radar, Yeti.
So it looks just like a plain mug, right? But
what's that? The Grinch. A little Christmas cheer here in March. Happy opening day, by the way. Just throwing that out there as well. Happy opening day.
We don't have to deal with the traffic. Normally, the route back home is a disaster because of opening day. It's parade and all kinds of crap. Don't have to deal with that today.
Traffic free today. So really quick, that I don't like the wide mug. A mug that wide, and I'm shocked that you do, knowing how you like to get your Americanos scorching hot. I cannot understand how you would want the wide mug where you lose the heat so quickly.
I don't, but it's horses for courses, right? So for an Americano, disaster. But for a latte, you need to like distribute the foam, right? And the trick is you whack it in the microwave for 30 seconds first to like preheat the mug, get some, get some thermal core into the thing, into the ceramic, and then you're good to go.
Okay. That makes more sense then. That makes more sense. And then opening day wise, the Giants are in town. Former employer. Happy anniversary to me. This is the day, March 27th, my sister's birthday. I got released on this day multiple times. I bring this up every year. This is the day I usually get released. You go in, hey, which team? They're going to send me to high A? They're going to send me to double A this year? Nope. Grab your stuff. You're out of here. Here's a plane ticket. It happened twice on this day, historically, during spring training.
It's not impossible, but I'd say it's very unlikely that you get released today from your current position.
Yeah, hopefully if I see a call from Mark, though, I'm not answering. That's the thing. If Mark calls me, I am not picking up the phone because you never know. You never know. I sensed something was going awry a couple of days before I got released. Like once you're off the pitching list for the next couple of days, it's like, I'm not pitching tomorrow, huh? It's my day. I'm supposed to pitch. What's going on? You're probably getting cut. So happy opening day. Giants are in town. I have been in touch with the Giants, trying to get out to BP. Batting practice on Saturday. Going to go see Buster. Would anybody want Buster Posey on the show? We're going to try to work things out. Try to get the president of the Giants on the show at some point down the road here. I think that'd be a good conversation.
Sure. We
like our executive conversations. Anyway, you ready to talk receivers?
Yeah.
Thanks for the happy anniversary plug. This was it. They just send you home. Steal your uniform. Delete before you can actually steal the uniform. They remove it from your locker. Yes. Everything's you go back to your locker and your bag's packed up. It's great. It's good stuff. All right. Yesterday was QB rankings. Did you get any feedback on QB rankings?
No. Did you?
No. Just wondering.
Oh, okay.
All right. Let's talk receivers.
That one then.
We didn't do. I had this big long diatribe about ranking quarterbacks, and do you have anything about ranking receivers? The difficulty in ranking the many receivers?
Yeah. So, a couple of thoughts before we start this. Number one would be, what you're saying. So the year by year, the more we do this, the more there are certain people out there that do their rankings and they break down wide receivers. They like segment them into varying different positions, right? Because it's not really one position. I mean, Randy Moss didn't play the same position as Wes Welker, even though they were technically both wide receivers, right? You're talking about very different positions within the one umbrella of wide receiver. So the more I do this, the more, like every year I have a little bit more sympathy for the people that break it down into like X receiver, Z / off the ball, number 2, and then slot receivers. And there are other people out there that subdivide that even further. I think that's going a little bit too far. But the more we do this, the more I do have sympathy, because I find myself getting into these rankings and like, why am I trying to compare this X receiver to a slot guy? Like for a start, even if I could tell you which one I thought was better relative to their peers, I don't know the correct answer in terms of which one is like, what is the value relative to one and the other? Like I know one is more valuable than the other. I don't know how much. And therefore, I don't know how to accurately say, well, I think the slot guy is relative to his slot peers, but I know the X guy is more valuable. What is the balance there? Like, how much does that take the first guy over the second? So that's the first point. First point is, before you listen to these rankings, it's an idiotic exercise to begin with, because it's impossible to rank various subdivisions.
We can really quick, if I could just respond to that point before your point number 2. I mean, it is our show, Sam. We don't have to do, top 10s. We don't have to do a vertical list. I know it's too late now. I'm just saying in the future, we could rank them by style. We can horyboard it, whatever. But here we are. We both have top 10s and a whole bunch of other guys to keep an eye on.
I mean, Ben Stockwell, our former colleague at PFF, like, he makes the point of there should only be 2 distinctions, right? It's just you rank the receivers, and then the distinction is simply, can he play X or does he have to be off the ball? In Ben's eyes, once you're off the ball, it doesn't matter whether you're a Z receiver or a slot receiver. It's all the same. Off the ball, on the ball is the only distinction relative. I think that's also a point that's fair. Like, you just rank them all, and then you put like a little note next to the guys that you think can play X, and that's a boost, that's a bonus, whatever. I think there's some merit to that. The second point I would make is, unlike quarterbacks, where even in a top 10 list, you quite quickly reach the group where you're like, I don't really like these guys. Like, because quarterback, you're shooting for star power, then you're shooting for starter, then you're shooting for like, these guys are backups. I find myself with wide receivers, particularly in the in the top 10, just because there's way more of them. I like all of these guys, and actually I like a bunch of guys that didn't even make the top 10 that we'll talk about at the end. But like, and I'm going to try and sort of frame it in this way, but we're going to talk about receivers that will be lower on our rankings than the consensus board. I still like them, right? Like, it's not like I'm saying this guy sucks, this guy stinks, I don't like him, I think everyone else is crazy. I still like all of these receivers. I just like them slightly less than A, other players, and B, the consensus or other people do. So I'm going to try and sort of try and not go too negative on the players that we have ranked lowly, because I like everybody that we're going to be talking about. There's nobody here that I think this guy stinks, this guy's garbage. And that has been true. Like, there have been players before where I'm like, I don't think this guy's good. Like, Laquan Treadwell, I did not think was a good wide receiver, and people were talking about him going, the first couple of rounds, blah, blah, blah. There's nobody like that here, where I just don't think they have anything to them and are going to be not good players.
Yeah, the one thing I just want to add to that, I say every year about receivers, because I agree with a lot of that. Ben Solak had a tweet the other day that I responded to, basically that every wide receiver class from here on out will be good.
Right. There will never be another bad receiver class.
Yeah. But I remind people, it's the nature of the class. If we treated other positions the way we treat receiver, and because of receiver, because you can just put them on the field on third down in the slot, right? You like Xavier Restrepo, who we're going to talk about, probably is a slot only, not even a Z, right? He probably just has to play in the slot. You don't do that for cornerbacks, right? You don't do that for tackles. Like, this guy's only good at pass blocking, so he's only going to pass block. And you say, I like him. You say, he's only good at pass blocking. I don't like him because he can't run block. Therefore, he can't be an every down starter. So with receivers, it's a lot easier to only accentuate the positives, tell people how you would use them, play to their strengths. And you can do that at the receiver position. You can't do that at cornerback, where a guy plays every down. You can't do that at offensive line, where a guy plays every down.
Yeah, I mean, there are guys that are like wide receiver 3 on their own college team that are going to be useful NFL players. That's not true in this draft. That's not true for like any other position. You're not going to look at somebody who's like the 4th best pass rusher on a team and be like, well, he's going to be a useful player at the next level. Like, he's going to have to play a bigger role than that in college before you project that forward. So it is a unique position that way. But generally, I do think that Solak is right. There's just too many. There's too many wide receivers. You're not going to have a bad class again. The distribution is going to be different. Like, this year is not as strong at the top as last year, where you had those 3 guys that would be wide receiver 1 in this draft class. It doesn't look like that. But once you get to like positions 4 through 25, it's as strong as last year and as strong as not any other year, but as strong as most years. It's a good draft class for receivers.
All right, Sam, we're going to do this a little bit differently from yesterday. I think we don't know. We haven't seen each other's list yet, but we've been told we have a lot of similarities. But we're going to go through. Yes, we're going to go through our top 5s each, and then we'll go player by player. So I'll let you unveil first your top 5 wide receivers, unless you have any other thing you want to preface ahead of the show here.
No, I think that's good. We going 1 through 5 or 5 through 1?
I mean, it's going to be unveiled in the next 30 seconds. So just talk through. I mean, are you listing all 5?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just whatever you want to do.
All right. I believe that Travis Hunter, wide receiver / cornerback from Colorado, is the best wide receiver in this draft. He is the #1 ranked receiver for me. I believe that Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona is wide receiver 2 for me. I think Luther Burden III from Missouri is wide receiver 3. Here's where I deviate, though, from the consensus, or at least something approaching the consensus. I think Jalen Royals from Utah State is wide receiver 4. And then Jayden Higgins from Iowa State is wide receiver 5. So that's my top 5.
Yeah. I like it. That's going to be different than most. I have the same top 3, Sam. So we'll do both of our top 5s and we'll go player by player. Travis Hunter, #1 for me. Tetairoa McMillan, #2. Luther Burden, #3. Then I go Jayden Higgins, #4. And I'm going Emeka Egbuka.
Ooh.
No, #5, and it's close between him and #6 for me. But Egbuka number 5, I think he's going to be an interesting discussion for you and I.
Yes.
So that's my top 5. Well, let's go player by player now. Yeah. Starting with Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter, the wide receiver. What do you love about Travis Hunter? Yours and mine. Wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I think Travis Hunter is the clear wide receiver 1 in this draft class. His ball skills are utterly sick, like ridiculous ball skills. He adjusts really well to the ball in the air, and he does it late as well. Like he's the kind of guy that can turn, see a ball, it's off target, immediate contortion, snags it out of the air. Guy's got 4 drops in his career, 3 last year. That's like a 3% drop rate. That's sort of Larry Fitzgerald levels of drop rate. And remember, he's doing this while tired most of the time, right? He's playing cornerback as well. That's the kind of thing that affects, concentration drops, just that kind of thing. Just a basic level of fatigue doesn't affect him whatsoever. He's got speed, he's got quickness, he's got change of direction, all really good. His releases at the line are absolutely sick. I think he's clearly the best receiver in the draft class. And I think you're only seeing whatever it is, 85, 90% of what he's capable of because he's playing both ways. There are times, and it's been, I think he's gotten better at this throughout his entire college career. You can see times where he looks visibly fatigued on both sides of the ball. Like you can see plays where it's like, man, that dude's tired. That dude is flagging right now. And a lot of the time, like sometimes it costs him a corner because if that happens on a particular play, you can get targeted. At receiver, it's less, I think, problematic because you can hide that a lot of the time. But there are times where he looks wrecked going to the line and they throw him like a bubble screen or something. And it's like that poor dude is like bubble screen. Maybe you just get 5 yards, fall over, but like he breaks a tackle. Now the poor guy has to run another 40 yards while he's already tired. Like I just think he's already extremely good. And I only think you're getting, there's still another percentage of capacity to get if you take the two-way thing off his plate.
I think that's another reason why when we talk about Travis Hunter as the cornerback, we say, well, he's a better zone corner than man corner, because there were times he did get torched in man against some of these receivers we're going to talk about here. And when you play man, that takes up a little bit more energy, right? You're running with receivers rather than, backpedal and read in. Maybe you don't have a pass thrown your way, and it's a little bit easier, so to speak, on certain plays rather than playing man coverage. I wonder if his man coverage as a corner would be better if he wasn't playing receiver as well. So I think that is a factor. Sure. And you're right. I mean, he's just a dynamic playmaker. When you look at receivers, I look at, can you win at all levels of the field? And then can you win after the catch? Right. And very few receivers have all of that, right? You can win down the field, you have the ball skills, and you have the good yak ability. I think he does. He has both of those. I think you can scheme up short routes for Hunter, and he can create after the catch. I think you can run him on short, intermediate, or deep routes, and he can win. And again, like you said, the ball skills are out of this world for a cornerback, right? And they're very good for a receiver, right? So that is always going to be his calling card. I've seen many people in the chat citing the fact that he called himself slow, and that we're not going to have a 40 time on Hunter, and maybe he's a 4-5 guy. I don't feel slow issues with Hunter. I think he's fast enough, but I don't think he's a burner, right? This class has a lot of burners. There's a lot of sub 4.4 40s in this draft class. I don't think that's Hunter, but I also don't think it affects his ability to win down the field.
No. So I don't know what is again, I feel like speed is a sort of three-phase thing, right? Instant acceleration, the kind of the real drive acceleration phase, and then the top speed. If he's missing one of them, it's the top speed thing, but the other two are absurd. His instant quicks are nuts, and his acceleration phase is absolute madness. Like his burst is crazy. So I don't care what he tops out at. Like I don't think that's particularly relevant to him. I think he can absolutely play outside as a true X receiver. His hands are good. His release is good. Occasionally he does get mauled, but he tends to fight his way through it. Like he definitely gets bodied because he's really slight.
He's slight, yeah.
But he does fight his way through that contact most of the time. It doesn't like kill his route the way it does with some other players. But I mean, and all this sort of talk of, well, you're only getting 85, 90% of him right now. The 85 or 90% version is already wide receiver one in this draft class. Like I'm not saying, once you project him to 100%, he becomes wide receiver one. I'm saying right now, what you see on tape is wide receiver one by a reasonable distance, in my opinion. And I think that's probably only 85 or 90% of what he's capable of doing. So if you then project that even further, he's just night and day, by far the best wide receiver in this draft class.
Yeah, I like Hunter quite a bit, and we have to talk a little bit about usage here, Sam, because it's a huge part of the Travis Hunter story. Like later in this offseason here, the draft season, we're going to rank cornerbacks, and we'll have him ranked separately as a cornerback. But the most fascinating draft in the story in the draft is what happens to Travis Hunter. Where does he go, and how is he used? You and I went to the combine and started to hear more of that groundswell that he is this wide receiver one in the class, even though I think we all agree it's easier to play full-time corner and part-time receiver. But the more you hear people rave about him as a receiver and not rave about the rest of the top end of the receiver class, how much might we see him as wide receiver first and cornerback second?
So that's the thing, is that I think it's easier to use him both ways if you're putting him as a full-time corner and then have a package of plays on offense. But I think the gap between him and everybody else is bigger at wide receiver than it is at corner. And I think he's better at wide receiver than he is at corner. So you have, like, that's the tricky part of this, is I think he's a better receiver than he is a cornerback, but it's easier to make him a starting corner and use him as a package on offense than it is the other way around. But the other thing is, again, I keep coming back to this all the time. Like, I don't know how many teams give a crap about the two-way thing. Like, I don't know how many teams are even interested in letting him attempt that. Whatever he wants, like, that's fine. You might love to continue this, like, unique two-way story and, become that's your legacy stuff. The team that drafts you in the top 5 might not care. They might just say, we have a hole at wide receiver. You're a wide receiver. End of story. And maybe, if injuries hit or whatever, your ability to play corner gives us some, Troy Brown flexibility to that we can emergency. We don't have to go sign a guy off the street. Travis Hunter can fill in, but we don't have a huge amount. Like, there's nothing in it for us necessarily to experiment with this two-way thing in the hopes that we can save a roster spot, or, we just don't think that that's viable. So we're not doing it.
I mean, I think they should, though.
Maybe, but also this idea of, I think you can definitely construct an argument that it's the same idea with this don't chase exceptions thing. Like, maybe he can be a two-way player and save you a roster spot and be a unique guy and a story that nobody's seen since the 1960s or whatever. Maybe. But if he can't, all you're doing is making him worse at the thing that he should be doing for no actual gain. And, you get into trouble when you start chasing unique, freaky, like, exceptions to the rule. I think a lot of teams are just not going to be interested in that potential risk, and they're just going to draft him at the position they think he's better at or that they need him at.
I can't wait to see it, because I just think that I would chase that. You know me. I mean, I would chase it. I would do it. I would chase the two-way thing. If you can get 1.5 players, is what I keep saying about this. If you can get 1.5 players out of Travis Hunter, I think he has it in him, right? He's good enough at corner. He's good enough at receiver that you can get 1.5 players out of him, and the extra depth chart spot and all of the different perks that he adds as a player. So either way, we both have Travis Hunter as wide receiver one. We both Love the skills that he brings to the table at wide receiver. Anything else you want to add about Travis Hunter and his game?
No, not really. I mean, are you at all concerned about the size, how slight he is? I mean, particularly, so he's a little bit like he's a less polished but slightly bigger version of Devontae Smith. I mean, Devontae Smith has obviously worked, has been really good in the NFL, but he does feel like a receiver that needed the AJ Brown in order to maximize what he can do, right? He needs to have the guy on the same team that can be that number one, that can take the physical attention, that can be the X, to let him maximize what are we at all concerned that Travis Hunter's size becomes a bigger problem in the NFL?
A little bit. I like the way you describe it, though. I mean, and we're also talking about, I think he's very likely to go to the Giants now at 3, or there's a high percentage chance that he goes at 3 and becomes the complement to Malik Neighbors. So that could be just a really nice fit. I mean, yeah, I don't think he's as good of a wide receiver prospect as what we thought Marvin Harrison or Malik Neighbors or maybe even Rome Odunze were as wide receiver prospects. Probably closer to Odunze, but completely different style and body type.
He's below all three of those guys last year.
Yeah, and he's a Z, and that's a Z's not a knock, right? It's just avoid press a little bit more and run more of your option routes, run more of your over routes, and things where you just don't need to go win in isolation. But I also think his play strength is good for his size, just like Devontae Smith's was, right? He's not getting bodied all the time, right? There are just times when it's going to be a challenge. So, yeah, a little concerned with it, but not massively concerned with it. So I think he's very good for what he brings to the table. All right, so that's Travis Hunter, wide receiver 1 for both of us. That pushed Tedero McMillan from Arizona to wide receiver 2. He was the consensus top receiver for quite a while, the type of guy that was talked about in the top 5. That has soured just a little bit. At the pro day, he ran somewhere between 4.53 and 4.55. Big-bodied, long receiver. What do you like or not like about Tedero McMillan?
Yeah, it feels like the consensus has moved in my direction since the start of this. Like when I first watched Tedero McMillan, apparently he doesn't like Ted McMillan. T-Mac or Tedero is fine.
I'm good with
is not acceptable.
I'm good with Tedero, whatever he wants to do.
So when I first watched him, I'm like, I don't really see wide receiver 1 in a draft class. Like and this was before sort of watching all the other receivers and seeing what the other alternatives were. So I'm kind of initially watching his tape and was a little bit underwhelmed. It wasn't that I didn't like him. It's that I just didn't see, I would be surprised if this tape that I'm watching is the best wide receiver in this draft class. And I think people are starting to come around to that idea and that he's worth, he's the best wide receiver in the class. He's not worth, the 6th, the 7th overall pick. He's more of a mid of the first round, lower end of the first round type of receiver. Now, that's still a very good player, right? And so there's still a lot to like about him. His long speed, I think, is really good. I mean, I know he ran a 4.5 something, but actually, when you get him loose and he's got a head of steam going, he's gone. You're not going to catch him.
Build up speed. He's a build up speed guy, right? Build up speed guy. Yeah.
So he's almost like it's almost the opposite of Travis Hunter in that regard. Instead, like he doesn't have the instant burst and the real acceleration drive. But if you get him with the ball in his hands and he's running, you're not catching him. So he's got speed. But what really jumped out to me is for a guy that's 6'5", 212 pounds, his lateral quickness is way better than you expect it to be. And it shows up both before and after the catch. After the catch in particular, I love McMillan. Like when the ball's in his hands, suddenly it's like it unlocks this level of fluidity to his movement. That's really impressive at that size. It also shows up though, like there's a lot of really good route running that you don't expect for a guy that size. Like he's got a lot of ability to cut laterally and to move. So I don't see him as this dominant, clear number 1 top receiver of the class, but I think he's really good, just different than people would expect him to be.
Yeah, I went on an emotional roller coaster watching Tedero McMillan. I mean, coming out of 2023 film, the first thing that I saw was the lack of dynamism off the line, right? At the average acceleration, and when you use the word build up speed, it's like, all right, he's kind of slow off the line of scrimmage. It takes him a little bit of time. And then the more I watched him, and I think this is going to be a theme for me for a lot of players in this draft, Sam, he's just good at everything. That's the theme for me in this draft. There's a lot of receivers who are just really good at receiver things, but maybe not the best athlete, maybe not the guy that you're like, man, this guy's definitely a top 10. And when I watch McMillan at his size, sinking his hips in and out of routes, he's good at that. His ball skills, I think, are excellent. Just straight up, do you have a lot of drops? No. Catches the ball generally and catches the ball off his frame. Good feel for running routes. He's tough over the middle. The toughness factor, that's one of those traits I think I've always, in recent years especially, it just, I want to see it from players, right? When you think about Steve Smith, if you think about Julian Edelman, if you think about a lot of the players that just took big hits over the middle, that really did separate them from a lot of other players. I think McMillan has some of that. So I come into the season thinking, my only question with McMillan's speed. And then in week 1, he goes off against New Mexico, looks a little bit faster, but it's New Mexico. And then you get through this year, and there are some games where this is my roller coaster, right? And I'm like, dude's not even running off the line of scrimmage on some plays. And then there's Utah where he almost looks, he's not finishing his routes. He's kind of getting bodied at the catch point. And I'm wondering, like, why is there so much, there's some inconsistency here. He was running some routes that looked like it was the 22nd play of a no huddle drive. And it was like play 2 or whatever. So again, I don't know if he was hurt. I don't know what was going on. I don't know if he's told to, there was also some times, right, in Arizona's offense, it looked like, hey, I'm covered. I'm just going to run the safety off. And it was still thrown to him. And that's never good when you're just running a clear out and the QB is like, I'm just chucking into double coverage. So I almost don't blame him. This isn't like, remember the old Baylor offense when dudes were literally told not to run because they run so many vertical routes and you just take a play off, and scouts didn't know how to handle that for a while. So I don't know if there was some of that to McMillan where it's like, hey, take a play off. But these are like 5-yard hitch routes and stuff that I'm talking about. So this is a bit of a roller coaster for me because there was some inconsistency and some, like the Utah game in particular, and a couple of midseason this year that were they were kind of bad for McMillan.
Yeah, he had some weird plays where I can't tell how many times, like he kind of loafs off the ball sometimes in a way that's difficult to tell if he's actually that, like if his build-up speed is really that slow or if he's actually not. Like if it's a deliberate attempt to vary the pace of his route, or if it's actually for some reason he's loafing off the ball on these routes. And again, it's not like it doesn't make sense as a tiredness thing because it can happen on 1st and 10 at the start of a drive. It can happen right at the start of the game. Like doesn't make sense that like, oh, he's obviously just run 3 go routes in a row. The guy's tired. So those are a little bit weird. And because of that, that's part of why generally I don't love his release off the line against physical coverage. I don't know that he sheds that particularly well. It doesn't immediately like get rid of that contact. Can run by it. Like again, he's actually got wheels. But if a guy gets hold of him physically, he doesn't defeat that easily and quickly with his hands. He can get kind of stuck on that contact, which is a problem for a big body guy like that who isn't going to necessarily separate with quickness, and it leads to those contested catches, which generally he's good at. He gets a lot of comps to Drake London. I don't think it's a particularly good comp for a variety of different reasons, but I don't think he's as good as Drake London at the catch point. Drake London was like a savant with the ball in the air. McMillan isn't that. He's got some spectacular one-handed catches, but I don't think he's as good at the catch point as London is.
Yeah, London, the first thing that caught my eye with Drake London was his lateral agility, which is not what he's known for, but his lateral agility, Drake London, for his size. The first thing that caught my eye. And then you watch London at the catch point and he just catches everything, right? We always talk about contested catches being kind of an unstable thing. And even the great George Pickens, who you would say that's the number one thing that he does. He goes through stretches like he did in Pittsburgh where he's 0 for his last 10 on contested catches. Drake London, I don't know where he ranks in the NFL, but he's got to be 80th, 90th percentile every year. Drake London is one of the best in those contested situations. And it's not the only thing that he does. He can get in and out of routes. So I don't think McMillan, I'm with you. I don't think McMillan's going to be that level, but he might be a little bit cleaner after the catch. As you said, there's like a little bit more, right? There's a little bit more dynamic ability to McMillan there, but he's going to catch the ball well. He will catch it in traffic. He will catch it in contested situations. Anything else you want to add? Because there's some interesting fits. I want to talk some fits for McMillan in the top 10 to 15, because I think there are some ones that already are being mentioned in the chat that would be great for him.
Yeah, like I think he's a lot better than Drake London after the catch, which becomes really interesting. So London actually, like his production ticked up when they started putting him in the slot and moving him more inside. McMillan again already has, like, he spent 20% of his time in the slot. He's got a lot more wiggle than you would expect for a guy that size. So I as much as I don't think they're particularly close stylistically as players, other than like big, tall, and pretty heavily built, I do think that they could be used very similar. Like, I think if you continued this idea of moving McMillan around, putting him in the slot, letting him exploit those zone coverages as well, because he's got a good understanding of leverage, tries to play, defensive backs against their leverage. He like attacks the weak side, makes them take a weird step or blind spot, makes them adjust, all those kinds of things. He really has a good understanding of coverage and how to get open that way. And that's the kind of stuff that works really well from the slot. So I would love to see him deployed in a similar way to Drake London, even if I don't think they're that similar as players.
So I see our friend Drake Holiday in the chat bringing up Teterow and McMillan at number 5 to the Jacksonville Jaguars, at number 12 to the Dallas Cowboys. That's going to be another story of this draft class. I like McMillan overall as a player. I don't think you want to bring him in as your true number 1 wide receiver. And it's kind of a nebulous term, wide receiver 1. I think that there's 12 of them in the NFL, maybe. I mean, we're talking, you drop them into an offense like A.J. Brown in Philadelphia and Jalen Hurts' stats go through the roof. You drop Tyreek Hill into Miami, his stats go through the roof. I think Brian Thomas Jr. has a chance to do that with Trevor Lawrence going forward. So I would love to see McMillan fit with somewhere where there is a Brian Thomas Jr., somewhere where there is a CeeDee Lamb, and then that looks potentially special. If the Giants weren't looking at maybe Travis Hunter, I mean, the Giants are at 3, might be a little high for McMillan, but McMillan would be an awesome compliment to Malik Neighbors. So I would love to, I think Jacksonville at 5, even if McMillan isn't the type of guy you normally take at 5, because you already have Brian Thomas Jr., isn't that a nice little 1-2 punch for Trevor Lawrence that should be considered?
Yeah, I mean, from McMillan's perspective, I love all of those fits because he doesn't need to be the number 1 guy, and I think he would absolutely cook as a complementary piece. But for exactly that reason, I think all of those spots are overdrafting him if they take him at that point. If that's your logic from the team perspective, why would you not wait until the second round and grab another one of these receivers for whom that would also be true, that they would cook as a number 2 instead of a number 1, and you don't have to spend the first round pick on it. So I love the fit, but I don't think it makes sense.
My point is I think he's more of a T. Higgins type, where you could see the path where for half the league you would think, okay, McMillan's going to solve my wide receiver 1 spot because we just don't have one, but he would be at his best like T. Higgins when you are complimenting a guy that's already elite, and that, as a team you can maximize that 1-2 punch. Like McMillan would be one of the best 2s in the league, much like T. Higgins is right now.
Yeah, but my point would simply be that at no point in his career, including now, would anybody give up one of the first 12 picks in the draft for T. Higgins. Like, that's the issue with that is, I think, yes,
I don't know.
If that was the case, somebody would have done it already. He wasn't drafted that high, and he hasn't been traded for that first round pick. And certainly a team like New England was not willing to give up the number 4 overall pick for T. Higgins. So the closest you're getting is Dallas. Would Dallas cough up the 12th overall pick for T. Higgins? I doubt it. So as much
Sam,
as, he could.
That's not apples to apples. That's not apples to apples because T. Higgins needs to get paid. You're talking about a rookie contract receiver versus paying T. Higgins $30+ million and the first round pick. Those are 2 different things.
Nobody's giving up that pick for that guy.
Rookie contract T. Higgins would go in the top 12 right now.
Maybe.
Absolutely. Like, if you drop T. Higgins into this draft class, you would say Travis Hunter, T. Higgins, and he'd be in the top. He would absolutely be in the top 12. Anyway, anything else on McMillan before we get to wide receiver 3, Luther Burden?
Nope.
All right, Luther Burden the third, Missouri. A lot of the debate with Burden is the usage pattern and so much of the short game and everything. So you're trying to search the film for seeing everything that you want him to do at the next level. What are your thoughts on Luther Burden? He's our wide receiver 3 for both of us.
Yeah, the first one I think where it gets difficult because there's a lot more projection involved. I love the physical traits, and somebody asked me yesterday on Twitter, like, what did we learn from or what did I learn in particular from Brian Thomas Jr. last year? Obviously, Brian Thomas, I was way lower on him than pretty much anybody else. And right now, if I was redrafting last year's wide receiver group, I think I would take him first, like above Malik Neighbors, above anybody else. I think he looks like the most special receiver of that group. So what do you learn from that? I don't, and there's always a danger of overcorrecting, right? Well, based off that, let's completely
I would say
swing and
don't overcorrect. Don't overcorrect.
Right. But what it does is make you think more closely about the guys that have incredible physical traits, and their usage pattern in college was not what you would want it to be. Right now, the problem is that leads you down the line of being like, let's draft Corey Coleman in the top 5 because he's special and the offense stinks. And, it doesn't always mean that those guys are going to be able to do it once you ask them to. But Luther Burden is that guy for me this year. Now, look, he's not as physically special as Brian Thomas Jr. Like, the numbers don't match. He's not the same size. He's 5'11", 208. He's a very different body shape. He didn't run a 4.3 flat. All these different, like, it's not the same, right? It's not apples to apples. But he's shifty. He's an elite change of direction guy. The ball in his hands, he becomes special. We talked about it before. He reminded me of prime Odell Beckham Jr. with the ball in his hands, like that ability to make people miss and break tackles. He had 30 broken tackles last year. This is like the down year for him, 30 of them and 65 in 3 seasons. He is an absolute menace with the ball in his hands. There was some awful quarterback play as well. And I know I'm saying that as a guy who had Brady Cook as like a sleeper that I'd be intrigued by, but like there was some rough quarterback play in there.
Yeah.
But it's a fake route tree. There's a lot of like Traylon Burks to that as well in terms of they're just manufacturing touches for him. It's really hard to project. Like, what happens if we take this guy out of the Missouri offense and I drop him into like a random NFL offense tomorrow? Like, does he immediately look twice as good because he's running real routes? It's a different role, and he's actually being a real NFL wide receiver. Or is that going to be a struggle getting him used to that? That's the big question with him.
Yeah, his movement is incredible. You mentioned 32 missed tackles forced. He had 10 against Boston College alone. And it wasn't just all screens. I mean, we're talking, little quick outs and everything where he's making the first guy miss. I love his movement in and out. Again, I was telling you off air, I was writing notes. I have notes for him for last year and this year, and it's like the same exact thing. It's the shiftiness, it's his acceleration. Love the body control down the field. So you didn't get a ton of the downfield throws, but you could see him adjusting to back shoulders. You could see him tracking the ball pretty well. I think he's very good at a lot of things. And then his special trait is the shiftiness, and that shows up in route running and it shows up after the catch. So I think you could do a lot with Burden. Again, I feel like we need to preface all of this. Is he an X? Is he the guy that you just, go beat one-on-one all the time and be the high volume best receiver, top 10 receiver in the NFL? Probably not. I don't think we need to say that for the next 15, 20 receivers we're going to talk about. But man, I think he could do a lot with Luther Burden. Now, OBJ, when he was at his best, I would say OBJ was that dude, right? He was the true number one,
Sure.
One down the field, ran routes at every level, and by the way, was outstanding after the catch. I don't think Burden's going to be that guy, but like a lesser version of that where he'll win a little bit down the field, can get in and out of breaks extremely well. And then I would not like full manufactured touches, but just the short game. I think you give him short passes, he'll make something happen with it. Give him 4 or 5 yard passes, he'll do something after the catch. So I think there's a lot of value in what Burden brings to the table.
And there's an unusual volume of players in this draft, or at least it feels like it to me, for whom the most recent tape is not the tape that is the most instructive. Like, if you go back to 2023, Luther Burden is a top 10 draft pick. Like, people were saying that at the time. It was him and McMillan seen as like vying for wide receiver 1 at the top of this draft, and both of them could be top 10 picks. And then Burden had a rough year last season. I don't think his play was dramatically different, but you saw like a much better use of him and a much better production because of it the year before. So, I don't know quite what you do with that. As like, generally speaking, you want to see the most recent tape being the most instructive, and that's true for a few other guys here. But for Burden, if you go back to 2023, I think you can easily sell yourself on this guy being a top half of the first round draft pick. And I think, again, yeah, I have him written down as like a Z receiver, but I do question whether he has X potential, like whether you can actually put him outside. He's got enough size. He's got the quickness to defeat that kind of press physical coverage. He's got strength to do it as well. It's not out of the realm of possibilities, I think, that he can become, again, not OBJ, because that guy had like, an all-time start to his career, but, can be OBJ in terms of a guy of that kind of size playing outside as your true number 1X.
Yeah, I mean, he does have all those skills, right? I mean, I think late hands down the field, body control that I mentioned, like he's got good wide receiver feel. And sometimes, like when you are getting everything schemed up and everything, yeah, you don't see that as much. But he had a 91 PFF receiving grade in 2023, one of the best receivers in the nation. So that's the year that you're citing, where if you go back and watch that, you see a lot more of what would project to an X receiver or the high end Z. So I like Burden. I like Burden quite a bit, and I think he brings just natural athleticism that some other receivers don't have in this class.
Yeah, and just like there are so much of his tape is like manufactured touches, fake offense, collegey stuff. There are some legit like X receiver snaps though. Like there's some plays there where he's doing that, and press coverage on the outside, one-on-one. And he's got like an instant snap release. The cornerback's in deep trouble right away. So it's a really small sample size, and that's the problem. And it's not always against the best competition. So that's the other problem. But like there is at least evidence of him doing that. It's not a total projection to be like, well, he's never played there before. Can he do this? This is like, okay, I see some snaps where he's doing this, where he's being a true X wide receiver and cooking people on the outside. Now, can we project that forward on a much bigger sample size?
All right, man. This is where we deviated a little bit. Who was your wide receiver for here? Jalen Royals from Utah State?
Jalen Royals. This is my guy this year.
Let me start with this really quick. I have Royals at 7, so okay. I still have him relatively high. He's in my top 7. So I have Royals at 7. You have him at 4. Why is he up that high?
Where is he? He's much lower on the consensus board, right?
Consensus board, he is 83rd overall, which is the 3, 6,
like wide receiver 10 or something, right?
12, wide receiver 12 right now. Again, I'd say the consensus board, he's peaked as high as 57. I think the consensus board is, I don't want to say it's moving slowly because he's moving down, and that does surprise me a little bit. I thought after a good Senior Bowl, Royals might move up a little bit, but yeah, he's down at 12 on the consensus board at the moment.
Yeah. And again, so the only point I would make there is I think like wide receiver, like last year and the last couple, honestly, wide receivers 5 through like 20, 25 are all pretty tight together. I will say, so we went to the Senior Bowl, right? First time for me. I don't know, what, 3, 4 for you? But we went to the Senior Bowl, and it took one snap of Jalen Royals for me to go, oh, because I knew none of these guys, right? I went to the Senior Bowl basically with fresh eyes, hadn't started the draft process yet. I was like, I'm going to go there without really seeing anyone, and jumps off tape. It took one snap of Jalen Royals to be like, oh, who's that guy? And then the second snap of him, like, okay, he's definitely good now. Like, first snap piqued my interest. Second snap was like, that guy's legit. And then, so I asked you, is that guy good? And you're like, yeah, he's legit. I talked to Mike Renner when we were down there. Renner's like, I think he's the best wide receiver at the Senior Bowl. And that included a bunch of these other top guys we're going to be talking about. So obviously that like set me going, okay, I like him. Let's dive in. I love his tape. Like I was not dissuaded from that opinion based off a couple of snaps. Once I dove into his tape, he makes it look easy. Like he's got this effortless style. He's fast with it as well. He ran a 4.42 and had a sub 1.5 second 10-yard split. Like he's not a guy that makes it look easy, and it's because he's not moving that fast. Like he was quick. He's strong and stocky and heavy built as well. Like the dude is. There was a play against UNLV where he takes a kill shot across the middle. Right, somebody there was a seam or a post or something. The safety lays him out, and the safety was KO'd. Royals just popped back up and was like walked off. The safety who delivered the kill shot was like sparked out. He is built like a brick. But I love his instincts. I love his route running. I love his ability to adjust to the football. Yards after the catch, it's all immediate. It's instant. I tell me why I'm crazy.
No, Dude, you're not, man. I mean, I was surprised when I saw his film. I mean, when you saw Jim Nagy was talking him up when Jim was still working at the Senior Bowl during the season. He was like, this is one of those smaller school guys you need to keep an eye on. The first part that you described, I call just like a fluidity to his game. There was just a natural, you said natural, the way he moves, fluid in and out of breaks. I think it was that part. I was surprised to see he's got a 98th percentile per PFF contested catch percentage over the course of his career. When you watch some of those plays, a lot of them are like slants. They're shorter routes, so it's not his game. It's not like throw up jump balls to him. Yeah.
So yeah, first of all, I was like, wait, they caught 98%.
98th percentile, 64%. Sorry, yes.
So one note I do have is that he doesn't get wide open separation. Like he's not, we'll talk about some other guys later on whose separation is their calling card. It's their special skill. Like they get wide open. Royals doesn't get wide open, but what he does is he gets position and he stays there. And he's really good once he's got position. So he's very good at getting position, and then he's very good once he has position. So even if you go and watch some of the routes in the one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl, you know, guys like Kyle Williams from Washington State, he was busting 5 yards open, and there was no one anywhere near him by the time that he was catching the ball. Royals was just getting open and then winning with position and beating the DB to the ball. The DB was usually pretty close to him, but he was always open. And that's what a lot of his tape is. Like he's not going to get wide open separation, but he is going to be open. And it's NFL open as well. Like it's going to be the right look. And then once he's in position, you're not beating him to the football. He's too strong. He's too good. He's too good at adjusting to it. So it's a slightly unusual dynamic there, right? He's not going to be like a wide open separator, but I do think he gets consistently open in terms of NFL levels.
And so I'm going to drop a comp here, and I got to preface all of it, right? We're just comparing one part of it, right? Because you just said he's not a wide open separator. The guy that I'm talking about was at his prime, Amari Cooper. The way Jalen Royals moves reminded me of Amari Cooper, just the smoothness to his game, the flexibility in and out of routes. But again, when you have that comp, you're like, Amari Cooper was one of the better separators in the NFL for a while. But if you had questions about what separated Amari Cooper from being A.J. Brown, from being a Tyreek Hill, from being a Jamar Chase, winning down the field often enough, getting behind the defense with pure speed, and I would say tracking, right? He wasn't great at those things. And I put Royals in that conversation. I don't think he's going to win. I don't think he tracks the ball or wins in contested situations down the field as much as, the high-end receivers. But the smoothness to his game, I like what you said, catches the ball, gets upfield really quickly, maximizes yards after the catch, just does a lot of receiver things well. It's why he's my 7 and, pretty close. A lot of these guys are bunched together here.
Yeah, his first step after the catch is usually very, very good. It wrong foots defenders a lot. Like he makes one step immediately, the DB is scrambling to get back in position. The other thing I think, he's pretty young to playing wide receiver. Like he's got like a season and a half of play at wide receiver at all. For that, he's got crazy polish for someone that's that new to playing the position, and at the level that he's been playing it at. Like I think his potential is a lot higher than he's showing already, and I'm already in love with him as a prospect. So, man, this is I would, if I'm the scout in the room, I am banging the table for Jalen Royals. I think he's legit.
That's so that's your guy in this draft, Jalen Royals. I have him at 7, not that far off here.
And just 6 foot, 205 pounds. He's stocky, like he's built tough as well.
Is that Amari's side?
Again,
Amari
huge
6'1", isn't Amari 6'1", 205?
It's probably similar,
somewhere in that range. Doesn't feel as thick, or is
Cooper feels taller than that? Am I wrong there? No, 6'1", 210.
Okay, yeah. I mean, Royals does feel like a little bit.
I don't hate that comp. Like I think there's a lot of similarities there in various ways.
Yeah. That's what I felt. I mean, that was just, again, vibes check. That's what I was getting out of Jalen Royals. I like him. Another guy, you put him opposite a big time receiver. I think this dude can get open and make things happen. So I have him as my 7. You have
just
him as
last thing on him. He's another guy. I think he's another guy I think that people are going to try and put inside as a slot guy because of his size. And even people at the Senior Bowl apparently were talking. He was saying, people like teams were saying, what do you think about playing inside, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously you're saying, yeah, whatever, like, well, wherever you want me. But this dude can play X wide receiver. Like even at 6 foot, 205 pounds, he's got he defeats press coverage. He's got violent hands to clear that that jam at the line. Like, I have no concerns that he can play outside. I'm not putting him in the slot just because of his size.
Anything else on your guy Royals here? I think
that's my soapbox pitch.
He's going to be your biggest guy, I'd say, in this list. By the way, my wide receiver 4, I almost, given the history of the last 2 years, I almost didn't want to rank anybody at wide receiver 4 because unfortunately last year or 2 years ago, you made me do rankings for the first time in a while, I think. And Jalen Hyatt was at 4. And then last year I was like, why not? Let's just have some fun. I put Jermaine Burton at 4. So my wide receiver 4s are probably have 10 catches over the last 2 years for at like 30 yards a pop, though.
They're also, I was going to say, kind of a type.
they do. It is a type. So the dreaded Steve's wide receiver 4 spot is Jayden Higgins. He's your 5. So let's discuss him next. Jayden Higgins on the ascent. And now, maybe the guy I think we were first to market Jayden Higgins first round hype, and we are getting closer and closer to this being a reality.
We are. And honestly, if you told me he was wide receiver 4 over Royals, I wouldn't hate it. I could even make an argument for him being wide receiver 3 over Burton. I wouldn't hate that either. I really, really liked Higgins. And I found this with a lot of this top 10, actually. I like these guys, and I wanted to push them higher, and I couldn't find the guy that I was willing to drop in order to make that happen. So I would be if I am all for, I would cheer a rankings that had Jayden Higgins, wide receiver 3 or wide receiver, maybe 2. Maybe 2. I could see that, but I would cheer that. I'm not willing to do it myself, but I'm willing to applaud that. This dude, there aren't weaknesses to his game. He's big, fast, but at 6'4", 215 pounds, he is way more nuanced and shifty than you would expect for somebody that size. And that shows up with his combine numbers and all those kinds of things. Like, this dude runs routes. He doesn't move like a guy that's 6'4", 215. And his combine numbers were freakish. 93rd percentile, a 10-yard split at that size. So 93rd percentile for all players, or all receivers rather.
Careful on the percentiles there. The percentiles might be off unless you're looking at better ones.
I've confirmed them with other places.
Okay, making sure. Just making sure.
But 90 plus percentile for receivers, period, at 6'4", 215. That's absurd. The 40 was really good. Percentiles really high in the jumps as well. This is a guy that's explosive, fast, and can move laterally. But
yes.
I like all of his game. I think he's really good.
I love when this happens, Sam, because I made the joke last year. It was Ray Davis for Kentucky. I was at the game when the dude went for 300 rushing yards against Florida. I was at the game when Jayden Higgins went off against University of Cincinnati, and I was like, "Who's number 9 on Iowa State?" And I was first to market, texting people, "What's up with this number 9 at Iowa State?" And I think he's gotten better even since that point. And I think metrics wise, this is, I think, what this draft is showing, right? There's a lot of players in this draft, including my next guy, my number 5, really good drop rate, low drop rate, high contested catch percentage. But when you go back, you're like, okay, he's not running 4.3, and it's not this take the top off the defense dynamism or whatever. Higgins and the other Iowa State receiver we're going to talk about soon here, Jaylin Noel. Noel makes everybody look slow relative to him. So if you watch both of those guys get into their routes, Higgins might look slow, but he's not slow for his size, right? I think he moves well for his size. He gets in and out of his breaks well overall for his size, catches the ball, gets upfield well, catches the ball at the catch point with the nuance, which is why he has 87th percentile contested catch percentage. He does a lot of things extremely well. And I think that's growing on a lot of people during this draft cycle.
Yeah, and so I think he has some of the best hands in the draft, maybe the best hands in the draft. His body control is sick. Like the ball is in the air. He's able to contort. He's that classic. He's a contortionist. But he's got amazing ability to maneuver himself around. Again, for a guy that size, that's not particularly normal. Elite hands, 7 drops in his entire career. That's again in that Larry Fitzgerald 3% kind of range. Despite apparently he's got pretty small hands, which is a little weird for a guy that size. The one area, if I was going to nitpick, so I said no real flaws to his game. The one area where I think there's a little bit, I think his releases need some work at the line. And part of where you're like, well, he's not sort of, I don't think cornerbacks are scared of his releases. So they just kind of back off, let him cook, and then engage. And it's like you didn't, like that didn't work. Like you did your thing at the line, and the corner basically just stood there waiting for you to actually do something. And like he's not scaring anybody with his release package, which is a problem right now. And I think once he gets that down, once he figures out how to actually force a cornerback to do something with his releases, then you're dealing with like a dominant force. Because now you've wrong-footed a corner, and he's fast enough to outrun them, and he's too big to get back once you're, in phase. That's the missing piece to his game, I think. Once he gets like a really strong release package or a couple of them, a couple of really nice releases that he can go to every time and force a corner to commit on him early, then the dude's going to be unstoppable.
Other pieces to Higgins' game that I really like, accelerates out of his breaks. That always catches my eye, right? When guys, they pop coming out of the break, especially for his size, and the downfield hand usage. Reminds me of a Jordy Nelson, Antonio Brown, like the best receivers in the NFL. Jamar Chase does it really well. And those are the 2 guys I used as Jamar Chase comps coming out, which was like this Jordy Nelson, Antonio Brown compilation.
Mashup.
Yes, when you know how to just create that last second separation and win at the catch point with your hands, I think Higgins, he just has so much of that. And then when you add it to this draft class, there aren't a lot of dudes who run well enough at his size, have all of these skills to play the X, to be that guy that a Buffalo could look at in the late first or whoever it might be. That's why we're saying Higgins has skills that other receivers in this class don't have. Completely different receiver than a Luther Burden, even a different receiver than a Travis Hunter. So how many teams are going to say this is the guy that we could put at X? And there's not many of these options in this draft.
Yeah, and we said that for a couple of years as well. Like if there is a weakness or a relative dearth at a particular skill set, it's those X wide receiver skills, those X wide receiver players, prospects, and Higgins is one of those. Like he's absolutely an X receiver. The point you made about accelerating out of his cuts, I think is a really good one. That was one of my notes as well. Like he understands how to use his body and make those cuts without losing speed, which for a guy that size is again like an important and notable thing. He doesn't like lose all of that build-up speed that he's got by making the cut. He's able to continue that at full speed. I think he's functional after the catch. I don't think that's a strength of his. So, it's not like I would nitpick that as a flaw, but it's definitely not like, man, this guy's amazing after the catch. It's, he's fine, but it's not like a massive strength. But route running is really good. Physicality is really good. That ability to play outside is a rarity relative to a lot of other guys. As I said, I have him at 5, but I would support and endorse pretty much any ranking for Higgins.
All right, here. Anything else on Higgins? Because this is where we have to talk about a player where we diverge a little bit, and then we'll get into our 6 through 10s. So we have the same top 3: Travis Hunter, Tedoroa McMillan, Luther Burden. I go Jayden Higgins at 4. You're going Jalen Royals from Utah State at 4. You have Higgins at 5, right? So we now have we've talked about your top 5. My 5 is Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. Where do you have Egbuka on your list, Sam? Is he even in your top 10?
So that's the thing. Egbuka right now, I was just checking. He's number 4 on the consensus board if you call Travis Hunter a wide receiver, right? So the consensus board has him below Oni, Tedoroa McMillan, Matthew Golden, and then Travis Hunter if you call him wide receiver. I have him at number 11, missing out on my top 10.
Wow. Not even in your top 10.
But again, so here's where I want to emphasize this, because this is going to feel negative because the question is, why do you not have him where I have him, right? Effectively, it's why are you lower on him than everybody else? It's going to feel negative. I like Emeka Egbuka. I think he's a good player. I think he will be a productive NFL player, but I don't see. I struggle. So Egbuka was one of the guys when we were still at PFF and we were doing, pre-draft stuff during the season. Trevor was flagging this guy as, hey, watch this wide receiver. He's one of the top few receivers in last year's draft class. And I was, so watching a bit of him, like, I don't really see it. Like he's fine, but I don't really see what I'm looking for. Again, it's, I don't really see top wide receiver stuff, right? And I sort of felt the same way, that like, it's all fine. It's all pretty good, but I don't really see it's just a lack of explosion, a lack of dynamism. It's very heavily dependent on, being the secondary guy within that offense, exploiting the zone coverage, being a lot of the slot production. It's unfair because the comps are going to be like two guys that go in the top 5. But it is notable the difference between him and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jeremiah Smith in the same offense. It's like, that's what elite looks like. This is a step down from that. And that's fine because that's what he's supposed to be at the next level. Like, if you want him to be your number 1 wide receiver, forget it. If you want him to be your number 2, he can be a really good number 2. But that's why I'm a little bit lower on that. I'm still chasing some of the guys that have higher upside than that.
Yeah, so that's this reminds me of the Anthony Richardson discussion a few years ago. The way I described Anthony Richardson was, I think most people are going to describe the tape the same way. I think everybody's going to have the same basic word description of what we saw, but people are going to value it differently. So that's what I'm hearing from you, is I have a lot of the same descriptors, but I'm going to value the consistency, the subtleties to his game, and I just think he's very good at all the receiver skills, which we'll get to in a second. And I'm going to value that higher. Where I think you've described the same player. I don't think he's a wide receiver 1. I don't think he's explosive. I don't think he's special in and out of breaks. I think he's just really good at all the subtle receiver things. And I'm valuing that as wide receiver 5. Even though when I talk about Jaylin Noel, I'm going to be like, dude, I want to put Noel at like wide receiver 1 because of the special that he could bring to the table. So that's what I'm hearing, is you're describing him the same way others are.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of other, like I'm seeing Chris Sims was pretty low on him relative to other people. I saw Lance Zierlein, I think was relatively low on him relative to other people. Zierlein is the guy that kind of does the NFL draft profiles. So I think there's quite a lot of people that do appear to be lower on him than this consensus. I do think that this is different because, like, normally when I'm lower on these receivers than other people, it's because, like, I actually don't think that they're nearly that good. I think Egbuka is good. I just don't think that what he's good at is as valuable as some of these other things. Like, I think he will be a very useful number 2. He's a technician, right? He's not normally, when you're talking wide receivers, you're talking about the athletic traits and like why they can be special. With Egbuka, you're like, I mean, he ran a 4.48 at his pro day, which is, average. Everything was sort of average, but he's a technician. He's got excellent feet. His sideline work is really good. He understands routes. Like, you can see, he understands both how to run the route and how to exploit the defense. Like, all that stuff's good, but the stuff, and he's good with the ball in his hands. Like, I think that's sort of his biggest strength, maybe. But I don't see the sort of dynamism and the special and the ability to be anything more than a decent number 2.
Yeah, for Egbuka, I tried to not like him because I don't see the special either, right? You're right. 4.48 is average speed. What? Do you have something to say?
No, I mean, I think one of us froze for a second. I will say, look, the chat is out here trashing my wide receiver record. And I as much as there are clearly misses in the last couple of years, right?
Ignore them.
I also really hated Laquan Treadwell relative to the consensus. I was dead right about that. I hated Quentin Johnston relative to the consensus. I was right about that one. Like, there's some wins in there as well. It's not just Jonathan Mingo and Brian Thomas Jr.
All right, it just ignore it. It doesn't matter. And anytime you make vertical lists, which are stupid, and it's a stupid way to evaluate, then yeah, it's like because you're not conveying that the difference between 4 and 8 is marginal, but you have to, but it's conveyed in a way that makes him look like, oh, 4, this guy's 8. That looks like a massive difference.
Also,
you have to
hear at the risk of becoming Chris Sims and just spending the next hour taking a victory lap, I was right on Jordan Addison. I love Tank Dell relative to everybody else. Like, there's some wins in here as well, right?
And you have to weigh wins and losses relative to the standard, and nobody has a good gauge of what the standard is to say. They're just going to say you were low on Brian Thomas Jr., idiot. Anyway, so I wanted to not like Egbuka because of I don't see the special, right? I don't see the big time speed, even for a guy that is a slot or condensed split receiver. He's not that shifty. He's good. He's not like Luther Burden in and out of breaks, like doesn't pop. But then that's what I started to like about him is he's good at all those things. You mentioned Jordan Addison. One of the very subtle things that Jordan Addison has done in the NFL, just the way when you run the dig route and you sharpen it just a little bit back toward the quarterback, you cut off the angle. The subtleties of the receiver position, Egbuka does extremely well. Very QB friendly. He's been productive across 3 different quarterbacks now, CJ Stroud, Kyle McCord, and then Will Howard, right? And there was times when he always seems to be on the receiving end of dimes. And I almost want to like give him credit for that as well. Like he's inducing these pinpoint throws out of Will Howard because he's always in the right spot, takes the right angles. I used to described JSN as navigating through the secondary efficiently and smoothly, and I think Egbuka does that. I just think he does so much well. And then much like when we talked about with McMillan, what we talked about with Higgins, the drop rate's low, the contested catches, he's really good at the catch point. He is really good at winning at the catch point, knowing how to create that late separation, very late hands. He does all of the nuances extremely well. Whereas if he did have another step or he did have a little bit more twitch to his game, I think he'd be a lock, like top 15 type of player. And then I know you brought up, you listened to Greg Cosell and what he said about him. I listened to some of what Greg Cosell said about Egbuka. He described the same guy that we just described. So now it's a matter of how you value. So you told me who he mentioned. He mentioned prime, by the way, prime Tyler Boyd, who is a very good player. He was the best number 3 in the league for a couple of years, I would say. Prime Tyler Boyd. I wrote down for Egbuka the continuum of 6-foot plus slot receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown, or 6-footish. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Boyd, Chris Godwin. Like that continuum of guys who live in the slot most of the time. They're not your Wes Welker size player. You're 6 foot plus. So I'm not saying he's somewhere in between, but like that type of player is what we're talking about. Could he be as good as Chris Godwin? I think that's in the range of outcomes. Chris Godwin type. Godwin's probably a better prospect. Could he be Tyler Boyd? I think that might be flourish for Egbuka. So that's a really valuable player. I'm valuing that high enough to put him at 5 on the list here.
I mean, I would say that's a good question, right? If you knew right now that he was prime Tyler Boyd, how high would you draft that guy, or how high would you rank him in a given wide receiver rankings against 25 unknown prospects, right? 25 guys that you don't know are going to be, the top end or the middle end or the low end of their range of outcomes.
In last year's draft class, I think prime Tyler Boyd's probably like 10 or 12. In this year's draft class, if you're valuing a floor and some certainty, it might be closer to 5 the way I've done it, because I think
obviously it's closer to 5 the way you've done it,
the way I've done it, right? And where I think in this draft class, it's certainly higher. Certainty of Tyler Boyd, what we knew Tyler Boyd was at the NFL level, which again, to remind people, he probably would have been a good 2 for most teams, right? But he was in Cincinnati where he was the 3, and he was probably the best 3 in the league at the time.
And honestly, that's basically what the Egbuka conversation comes down to. Almost like literally everybody you hear describe him pretty much articulates him in almost identical terms. The question is how you value that relative to everybody else in this draft class. Let me ask you a question to just tease that out a slightly bit more. To rank him 5, are you out of players that you think have that number 1 ability then? Like, are you already into the number 2s effectively?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was in the number 2s, I think, beyond McMillan. I mean, there's always Luther Burden as a 1 or Jayden Higgins as like a 1. Like I don't see him as a 1. When I say 1, I'm not talking the specific role X. I'm talking about the 150 target, 100, or say the 110 catch receiver. I think we're out of that guy after Burden, probably. Burden could be a high volume, high catch guy, but I'm talking 110 catches and 14 yards per reception type of player. I think we're out of that almost immediately in this draft class. So we're all into number 2, 3 role type of players in this draft.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's the sort of nebulous number 1 thing, but I think X also brings with it a boost because those guys have that scarcity thing. So I'm kind of boosting anybody with X potential up higher as well, which is how you get particularly people like, Higgins, I think is significantly better because of that potential.
And so that's the tricky part. Like if we were putting these guys into categories, because this draft class has a whole bunch of sub 4.4 guys too. Like rank your top 5 deep threats. We could make a top 5 deep threat list of like Chimere DK from Florida and Dante Thornton. Like who's your favorite Khalif Raymond number 4 receiver 4.3 guy? And we'll talk about those guys at some point in the next 2 hours here. Anyway, I wanted to not like Egbuka, and I liked him more and more. Watching Will Howard, I'm like, this guy's good. He's good. He's good at all the subtleties. And when you add up all the subtleties of the receiver position, I'm like, okay, this guy's going to be a good pro.
Yeah. And to me, again, I like him. I just have a lower value on what he's good at than a lot of other people seem to. And relative to other people in this draft where I think they have more potential than that.
One thing that Egbuka could do maybe to add a step to his game is
I do know.
Add some protein to the mix. If he had the right protein, like Orgain, I'm a former professional athlete. Egbuka is a future professional athlete. Get some Orgain in his body because that's what I put into my body as a former pro athlete. Happy opening day. Happy Orgain day. So this podcast is sponsored by Orgain. Orgain believes real nutrition has the power to make a real difference in people's lives. Orgain's new 30-gram complete protein shakes offer protein-packed real nutrition designed to satisfy your cravings without any added sugar. Plus, they're an excellent source of premium, ultra-filtered protein with all 9 essential amino acids. Orgain's products are handcrafted with high-quality ingredients that make it taste like some of the best protein shakes I've ever had. I've had a plethora of protein shakes through the years. I love the chocolate, love the vanilla. They're both great. So get yourself some Orgain. It's also great if you're busy. It's simple. You just grab one of Orgain's protein shakes and go. Bring it to a workout in the car, wherever you need it. No more time-consuming prep to get the protein you need. Really convenient to take on the go. And then from protein powders to bars to shakes to tons of other nutritional products, Orgain has products that the whole family will love. So there are no quick fixes when it comes to your health. If you want more protein, give Orgain's 30-gram protein shakes a try. Head to Orgain.com/checkthemic and use code checkthemic for 30% off your order. It's the best offer you'll find, but you have to use the code checkthemic for 30% off. One more time, 30% off. Head to Orgain.com/checkthemic. Use code checkthemic. Ross Tucker would be proud. Smooth. All right. So we both have our top 5. Egbuka is not even in your top 10. One notable name here that neither of us has mentioned is Matthew Golden, currently number 18 on the consensus board. I think we're going to have a good Matthew Golden discussion here. Does he make it into your top 10 here? So you give your 6 through 10, and then I'll give mine.
Yeah. Number 6, the other Iowa State receiver, Jaylin Noel. Number 7, Matthew Golden from Texas. Number 8, how are we saying his name? Bech?
Bech. I believe it's Bech.
Yes. Jack Bech from TCU. Number 9, Tre Harris from Ole Miss. And then number 10, Kyle Williams from Washington State.
Okay, yeah. Now it's getting interesting. We still have some similarities here, Sam. It is, we're starting to see the game through the same eyes, which is scary. Number 6 is Jaylin Noel for me at Iowa State. I have Jalen Royals at 7 from Utah State, as we already talked about. You're number 4. I have Matthew Golden at 8 from Texas. So we'll have a good discussion about your 7 and my 8. I have Tre Harris from Ole Miss at 9, and I hate Ole Miss receivers. We'll talk about that when we talk Tre Harris. And I have Jack Bech, number 10 from TCU. I will discuss the Kyle Williams thing. I have him just on the outside. I want to debate him at 11 or 12 or 13. There's reasons to like.
Yeah, after we get through the 10, we got a whole list of names we need to run
through. We have a whole list of names, right?
Aren't on the top 10s, but definitely deserve to be talked about.
We're an hour and 15 in. We might be here for 2 more hours. I can't wait. I love it. We're talking receivers. We're having fun. So let's start with your number 6 and my number 6, Jaylin Noel from Iowa State. He keeps growing on me, Sam. If we did this list in 2 weeks, he might be number 2 for me. He's just on the rise in my eyes here.
Yeah, I mean, dude, he's really good. So quick, speedy, sudden, quick twitch. Primarily a slot guy in college, like over 70% of his snaps have been inside in the slot, but he's got that vertical slot ability, right? Like he's not just a guy that plays horizontal. You think slot receiver, you think Wes Welker still, right? But there are guys that can take the top off a defense from the slot, and he's absolutely one of those guys. And he's so much better at the catch point than I was expecting him to be at 5'10" and 194 pounds. Like he is really good at the catch point. There's a play, I forget who it was against, but the quarterback heaves this ridiculous pass in a double coverage that had no business whatsoever being thrown at any point. And I still don't know how Jaylin Noel came down with it, but he did. He'd like beat 2 guys converging on him, somehow came down with that football. He's got, good body control, adjust to the pass well. His releases are slick. They're sudden. They're quick. Like if Higgins had Jaylin Noel's release package, Higgins might be the number 1 receiver in this draft class. But man, I mean, his tape's great. I love him.
I really love Jaylin Noel. I mean, he ran in the 4.3. He ran 4.39. But I was asked yesterday, because I was kind of hyping him up on Twitter yesterday, and I was asked, if he didn't run 4.39, would you still hype him up? I said, yes. I mean, he looks even faster than that on film. He looks fast, and he confirmed it with his 40 time. The guy that he reminded me of watching his film was Ladd McConkey. And the description that I used when I watched Ladd McConkey is, here's a guy that runs in the 4.3s, feels like a 4.3 guy, but decelerates unbelievably. We have a history of 4.2, 4.3 receivers not working out, and the problem is deceleration. The problem is slowing down, getting choppy with your steps, extra steps in and out of breaks. Ladd McConkey, speed plus quicks. Jaylin Noel has the best combination of speed plus quicks in this draft class. I almost want to put him up at 3 in this class. I'm telling you, I want to put him up higher.
Do it, coward.
Maybe I could. Maybe I'm telling. If you give me a couple, if we re-rank, 2 weeks before the draft, Jaylin Noel might be number 3, because the more I watch him, the more he grows on me, because speed in and out of breaks, quickness in and out of breaks, and ball skills. I mean, what more do you need in a world where I'm always looking for the 4.3 guy to take the top off the defense? And what has separated 4.3 guys who I always joke about, Mike Wallace and Will Fuller, those guys who took the top off the defense. Mike Wallace did it, and he didn't have the best ball skills in the world. Then you had Will Fuller, who had slightly better ball skills, right? And then you have Tyreek Hill, who does that and has the best ball skills of that group. Like, Noel's got good ball skills and the speed. I don't know that he's a slot only either. Why are we saying that? Right. Just because of his size? So you said who could play X and this and that.
And the usage. I mean, the fact that he's there.
I'm not saying he needs to play X. I'm saying you give him some of the motion releases. You give him the Z releases, but he runs this over route, the post route, the go ball, as well as anybody in this class, and you're going to get good results there. So I just love Jaylin Noel. I guess my only question for him, like if you look at some of his metrics, he's better against single coverage than against zone. And so he doesn't always have, and he's not bad, but he's a lot of the Egbuka thing is like the guy's just going to get open against zone, nowhere to go, catch the ball, catch it in traffic. I didn't mention Egbuka's toughness that I loved. Noel, might be a tick below in some of those other things that you're going to ask slot receivers to do. But as a vertical slot receiver, take the top off the defense guy, I think he could do so much, and I like Noel more every time I watch him.
And this last season was like the first time, because again, like slightly, undersized, 5'10", type of 194. Was that what he clocked in at the Senior Bowl, I think, or at the Combine, whichever one. But like you see that, you see the quickness, you immediately label him as this slot guy, right? But last season was like the first year that his own team realized, well, actually, he could be vertical. Like this is not just a slot only guy. So his average depth of target last year almost doubled relative to like his previous career baseline. He went from 6.6 and then 7.7 to 12.2. Like they suddenly realized, hey, this dude with blazing speed is actually dangerous as hell deep down the field as well. He can be, a threat all over the place. So yeah, I agree. I think he's got more versatility than just plugging him in the slot. Even if you're limiting him to a slot role, it's one that's a vertical threat as well. In that Christian Kirk kind of way, where he was more of a vertical threat than he was a horizontal threat all the way through his career. I think he's going to be a really good. I would say he's still going to be a slot receiver, but he'll be a really good one who can challenge like all levels of the field.
Some of the other points that I forgot to mention earlier too, when listening to Greg Cosell, the great Greg Cosell, Greg added one more point, which I was thinking along the way here when he was discussing Egbuka, and that's relevant here for Noel. When we say slot receiver, that also includes condensed split outside receivers. Maybe I did mention it at some point, but like the Rams do this a ton. The Dolphins are doing this a ton. So many teams are condensing splits, which gives you the two-way go, which just gives you more room to operate. So you're technically an outside receiver, but you're working with slot type of room, basically. And so Noel is special in those types of areas. So for today's offenses, the verticality that they're adding to the mix with those condensed splits, I just think he does so much. I mean, maybe I will rank him higher. I love watching Noel play, and he has a lot of the traits that I'm looking for in a vertical receiver.
And just to articulate how explosive he is, right? He had the best performance at the combine in the broad jump, right? That's an explosiveness measure. Was the best at the vertical jump, also an explosiveness measure, and had the best bench press of any wide receiver. So the dude's strong. And he was top 5 in both the short shuttle and the 3-cone, which is your change of direction stuff. So this guy is instant quick twitch explosion and quick change of direction skills. Like those are huge for a guy who's going to be playing in that type of role, right? That quickness that's basically like a total round measurement of quickness and quick twitch.
Yeah. So look, I love Jaylin Noel. I guess it's not even a knock on him. It's just I don't know that it's his game. If you make him into a traditional slot receiver and you ask him to run all the the toughness routes, the things that I think Egbuka is going to do really well, work in the middle of the field, finding the soft spot in zone, taking a hit, that type of thing. I don't know if he's going to do that as well. Not that he can't do those types of things, right? When you put Noel in the slot, he's going to out leverage a linebacker to the slot. He's going to, he explodes into his routes. He's just going to out athlete people to get open, but it's just a different style slot receiver. So just make sure you're using him in the right way. And I would tap into the verticality that he brings to the table. So huge Jaylin Noel fan. He's number 6 for both of us. Depending on what you're looking for, though, I could see him going high. I could see him. Most good receivers who run would have a 4.3 next to their name. Now it's a 4.39. There's a difference between 4.39 and 4.32. Like we know that, but it says 4.3, which does something in your brain differently than when it says 4.4. It really does. But most guys who are good receivers who have a 4.3 something next to their name go in the first 2 rounds. So I don't think he gets out of round 2, and all the teams looking for a vertical threat are going to like him. He had a really good Senior Bowl. Like he's ticked a lot of boxes this offseason as well.
Yeah.
You made the point yesterday. A month ago, we weren't talking about 2 Iowa State receivers being in top 5s for wide receiver rankings, and that's not crazy to have Noel and Higgins, and now they're both in our top 6 at this point right now.
Yeah. All right, man. And again, if you put them both in the top 5, I don't think it would be nuts.
Had a question about my SMWW class. Go to smw.com, look for the classes there. I will be teaching a football analytics course starting in a couple weeks in April. The question was about the July class. I'm doing whatever the analytics classes are there, so keep an eye on it. smww.com. Search my name. I'll tweet it out again later today if you want to join the class. Your wide receiver. My wide receiver 7 is Jalen Royals. We already discussed him. Your receiver 7 is that who was it again?
Golden.
Oh, it's Golden. All right, let's have the Matthew Golden discussion. Why do you hate Matthew Golden? No, let's do it like this. Start with this. We're lower on Matthew Golden than the consensus. Doesn't mean we hate him, but let's discuss Matthew Golden's skill set.
Yeah, I mean, I like Matthew Golden. I just don't think he's an elite first round talent. And again, I think I don't know. So it's tough to figure out because he was showing up in first round mock drafts before he ran this 4.29 at the combine. So I don't think you can say, well, the 4.29 is the only thing keep putting him up there, because it was happening already. I do think, though, that there's simply no way he runs a 4.29. I think that is a fake number, whether it's an error in the timing, whether it's like his arm swung early and triggered the laser at the, at the tape instead of his chest. Something happened. That 4.29, I just don't think is a real number. Literally everybody, I've yet to see anybody say that he plays like a 4.29 receiver. None of the tracking data says he plays like a 4.29 receiver. The miles per hour stuff at the combine doesn't say he runs a 4.29 either. Like literally nothing, other than the fact that it was a number that measured on a timing thing somewhere, which is still ultimately a fairly janky system, because it's, something's got to move to trigger it. Something happened. I think he's a 4.4 flat receiver, right? Which is fine, but is no longer special. It's just like, that's what you expect for a decent leveled prospect. But his route running, so it's not like his speed is not his selling point, really. His route running is a selling point, and he's good at that. He's a really good route runner. He likes to vary his pace and timing and routes rather than, just running everything at full speed. He's got good body control, a good catch radius, pretty good reaction to off-target throws. I think some inconsistent hands, but they're not bad. To me, like his best work is at that intermediate level. Like he's that classic Z receiver where he can cook at the intermediate level. His route running is really strong. He's sort of good at everything. He tracks the ball pretty well. Was very good at both tracking the ball and the contested catches last year. And I do think it's worth noting he was a different player at Texas than he was at Houston. Like he was notably better for the Longhorns than he was previously. But yeah, I think he's good. I just don't see this, the people that are kind of putting him out there as wide receiver 1. I don't really see that in his game.
Our friend Drake Holiday in the chat says, watch the game winner against Temple. This was 2022. I'm going to fire it up. I'm firing it up right now. That's where he looks like he's 4.29. I'd say, yeah, I mean, he looks pretty fast. I wouldn't say 4.29. I think that's a coverage bust more than anything. But yeah, he looks fast. I mean, he looks fast there. But I'm with
4.4 is fast. It's just not 4.29.
It is. It's not like 4.29. You feel it, right? When you watch, I think Xavier Worthy is game fast. Xavier Worthy feels game fast. You feel that speed. That same question I fielded on the Jaylin Noel discussion, right? Which was like, hey, just because he ran 4.39, does that change your perception of him? I said, no, I feel the speed when watching him. I've never felt the speed watching Matthew Golden.
I mean, there aren't many situations where this would be true for a time speed, but if you put him and his teammate Isaiah Bond, who remember was talking about breaking the 40 record and then ran a 4.3 or whatever it was, or a 4.4. No, he ran a 4.4 flat.
4.41, I believe. What's his?
I think his got downgraded to the 4.39. So I think they're literally a tenth apart, but with Golden being the faster guy. If you put him in pads, in Lycra, in whatever you want, if you lined Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond up right now and had them race a 40 in whatever way you want to do it, I would bet good money that Bond wins that race every single time. And yet Golden was the guy that tested faster. I just don't believe that number.
Yeah, I thought Bond looked faster than Matthew Golden. Look, I think he's solid at everything, right? I mean, my note was it feels like a Romeo Doubs type, a guy that intermediate level that you described. I think he's got some really slick routes. And we've said on this show before, you could take this one of two ways. If you didn't think he was all that fast, but you like his route running, you could convince yourself, oh man, he's also got this juice too. He's also got this 4.29 juice, right, and he's a good route runner. Like combine that thing. John Ross ran 4.2, but he didn't have all of the other nuanced receiver ability that a Matthew Golden has. Therefore, it's great. Or you could say, I don't really believe the time. He is what he is. He's not necessarily a deep threat type with that speed, but he's a good intermediate route runner. He's pretty good at a lot of different things. Catches the ball all right, in and out of breaks, does a lot of things well. And by the way, he's got some juice too. That's great. But that's just where I think he is, which is somewhere in the receiver 6 to 10 thing. I think some of the other guys that ran slower at the combine have better all around skills, package of skills that I'm more intrigued by.
Yeah, it's a similar conversation to the Egbuka one, albeit sort of different players, different body types, etc. I mean, Golden's 5'11", 191, but the point is, I think they're both complementary pieces to an offense. I don't think either one of them is a true wide receiver one in an offense in the NFL. I don't think either one of them is wide receiver one in this draft class. And the question is, how do you value that? Now, I think Golden's route running is really, really nice. But I do think like he was getting better. He's sort of almost like wide receiver Will Howard, where he was getting better the whole way. He was finished on top. Like his best games were late in the year, in the playoffs, Georgia, all these kinds of things. And that, I think there's probably some signal to that. Like that's probably a relevant thing. But I don't think that he's going to be that dominant force at the NFL level.
Yeah, I'm similar. I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, he's peaking at the right time, had some big games down the stretch, did it at a time when people were talking about Isaiah Bond as the better player. I think we'll mention Bond at some point later in the show. There's stuff to break down there, but yeah, Golden I think he's a good all around receiver. I'm having a tough time putting him because he's on the consensus board right now at just behind Teterow and McMillan, right? Wide receiver 3 if you include Travis Hunter. I'm having a tough time putting him ahead of a guy like Luther. Obviously, I didn't. Luther Burden or even a Jayden Higgins or these other guys that I think bring different skill sets to the table.
Yeah, agreed. And even just within that Texas offense, like when they were both healthy earlier in the season, I think you can make the case that Bond was the go-to guy, not Golden, right? And obviously that changed later in the year, but Bond got hurt and he wasn't the same player. And then it was late in the year when Golden really took over and took off and had those monster numbers and those kinds of things. But even then, again, it's like, does his speed show up on tape? Despite the fact that he went off for huge numbers against Georgia, the Georgia cornerbacks were not at all scared by Matthew Golden's speed. They were like, they had no interest in, jamming him, trying to disrupt him. They just let him release and ran with him. They weren't scared of, like, I watched the Georgia corner give up outside leverage, play trail technique, and just jog with him. And it wasn't a problem. Like, he was not at all worried about, oh, dude, if this guy's got 4.29 speed, I'm in trouble if I don't get hands on him at the line. He was just like, I can run with him. It's cool.
Yeah, and look, Bond, the first couple times you watch Bond, you're like, okay, that guy just moves differently. I think Golden, when you watch him, it's like, okay, he's in and out of breaks pretty smoothly and better than a lot of other guys in this class. To me, it's the in and out of breaks that Golden does extremely well. Not so much anything from a straight line, take the top off the defense standpoint. So he's a good receiver. Look, we could be wrong. We could be wrong on this. I mean, we don't hate him. We both have him. I have him at 8. You have him at 7. Just don't have him. We're not as high on him as others. I think he's pretty good at a lot of receiver things.
Yeah. Again, trying to sort of reinforce that point that, like, even though it sounds as an overall negative, because we're like, why is he not wide receiver 2 in this draft class? We both like the guy. He's in the top 10 of a draft class, which is itself impressive.
All right, so we've already discussed my top 8 because I had Royals at 7, Golden at 8. Who's 8 for you? Let's go through that again.
TCU's Jack Bech.
Okay, yeah. So Bech was number 10 for me. What do you like about Jack Bech?
A lot. I mean, I really like his game. He's sort of, I think he's better at Egbuka at similar things, right? Like they sort of fall into a similar category to me in that I think they're complementary pieces to an offense. They're both, Z wide receivers. They're both the secondary guys. I just think Bech is better at it than Egbuka is. He's got, good size, athleticism, change of direction. It's all kind of above average. None of it's great. 6'1", 214 pounds is his sort of official measurements. This is somebody, interestingly, who, TCU wide receiver. He started off at LSU, and as a freshman, he led their team. So this is back when, they had the Malik Neighbors and the Marvin and the Brian Thomas Jr.'s. Jack Bech was the guy that led that team as a freshman. That's at least worth throwing out there as a notable thing before he then got kind of buried on that depth chart, swallowed up, and ended up going to TCU. Another guy, and I've said this about at least 2 players already, but some of the best hands in this draft. 1 drop last year, 4 in his career. That, again, is the 2.9% Larry Fitzgerald 3% kind of world of just freakish hands. He's, for a guy that, 6'1", 214 pounds, sort of white wide receiver, your mind immediately goes to a bunch of cliches, right? He's kind of a load after the catch. Like, he's got 17 broken tackles in multiple different seasons. He's not easy to bring down once the ball's in his hands.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think of how many times in this class and looking at drop rates and contested catch rates, there's a lot of receivers in this class that are really high at both of those, or good at not dropping the ball and good at winning in contested situations. And so I think it's a dependable wide receiver class, and Bech is another guy in that mold. I wrote down he's physical after the catch. He brings a physicality to the table, much like when Kansas City added Isaiah Pacheco to their backfield. And it's like, hey, Kansas City is, speed and yak. And oh, by the way, you have to tackle this dude running like a maniac out of the backfield, Pacheco. If you want physicality on your team, Jack Bech brings that. So not a shiftiness, just like, hey, it's going to be difficult. We're going to be physical at the catch point. We're going to be physical after the catch. He brings a lot of that to the table. And then for those that don't know, the entire Senior Bowl story, his brother, Ty, was a player at Princeton. He was killed in the terrorist attack in New Orleans back earlier this year. And so obviously that hit the family and Jack Bech really hard. They still went to the Senior Bowl. Mobile is, less than an hour from New Orleans or just right in the region there. Jack Bech goes to the Senior Bowl, has a great week and really good practice week, always doing his thing, contested catches, making big plays, and then has the game-winning touchdown in the Senior Bowl, walk-off touchdown in the Senior Bowl. Certainly doesn't, make up for the fact that he lost a brother just a month earlier, but, he tried to make the best of that terrible situation and, really had a great week at the Senior Bowl given those circumstances. So there was a lot to root for Jack Bech, and then just on the field stylistically, a lot to love about his game as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was a lot of people's, one of their winners of the Senior Bowl week just from his performance in practice, completely independent of like what an amazing determination and resilience he showed just to be there doing it at all, and then to have the game-winning touchdown. Amazing story and a horrible sort of situation for him and his family. But yeah, I think that has to stand in his favor, right? The sort of the professionalism, if you like, to still show up, not just do your job, but do it at an extremely high level, despite that family tragedy unfolding around you. I mean, it's a sort of horrible thing to be, like folding in a guy's personal tragedy into what he is as a prospect, as a player. But it probably has to be a positive for him that he's shown that. But yeah, I mean, look, I like his game a lot. I think he's got this intuitive understanding of zone coverage. You talked about Jaylin Noel being better in man coverage than zone. Zone is a tricky thing for receivers because on the one hand, it is kind of set up for, if you understand what you're looking at, it's just like run to a spot and be there, right? Which is not the hardest thing in the world to do. It's a lot harder to find an elite man cover corner and shake him loose, which is why I think that's a more valuable skill set. But that isn't to say that it's easy, right? It's still difficult to understand how to operate within zones, right? How to settle in space, how to create the space, where the space is going to be, and how to be moving into the space at the point when the quarterback is looking to get rid of the ball, when to settle, when to keep moving, all those kinds of things. Bech sort of shows that like it's already in his brain. He knows how to work all that. He works his routes around defensive backs. He sort of opens up the gap. Like he's got an elite understanding of zone coverage and how to maximize that space and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he didn't feel that shifty or twitchy to me, but he had pretty good change of direction times. He had 6.84, 3 cone is pretty solid. I don't know that that's necessarily his game. Again, I think he's more physical than anything. And the other concern I have with him, I didn't love his catch radius, off target throws. I don't think he did a great job adjusting to those as much as other receivers, but again, bring something after the catch, at the catch point, and I think he's good. I think he's good all around, man. Like Jack Bech, I have him as my number 10 here. And yeah, remember, understand really quick, understand the tone here because it feels like we do this all the time. We're trying to explain why Matthew Golden's not 2, but he's ranked higher than Jack Bech. Trying to explain why we really like him. We like all these receivers for the varying things that they do well, and just putting them into context relative to others.
And again, once you get outside of those top few guys, I think all of the next 15 players are extremely close together. Like, I want to push every one of these guys higher on my rankings and can't find the guy that I would drop in order to make that happen, including Golden, like the guy that we've been like, why is he not wide receiver 2? Like, I wanted to find a spot higher on the list for Golden, and I couldn't figure out which guy above him that I would be willing to drop below him. Like, if give me the choice of any of those guys, I'm taking them before Golden, et cetera, et cetera. So like, this is all splitting absurdly fine hairs. The one thing I would say, I agree with you about Bech. I don't think his sort of lateral change of direction twitchiness is there, but he's really good. His route running savvy and understanding and relationship with defenders is really good. Like, he understands how to attack those blind spots, how to make a corner wrong foot himself. You know, like, there's plays where he's got he wants to go inside, the corner's aligned inside. He understands how to like attack that guy's leverage to the outside, make him open up, and then jump back into the space. And does the same thing with, you know, the kind of snapping off his breaking, his routes to create that separation. He's not twitchy and you know, explosive with the change of direction stuff, but I think he's really good at like maximizing that space with understanding his route running. Sometimes I think there's some, like, I think sometimes he's inconsistent with the breaks, and he rounds them off a little bit too much. And then that's where that lack of change of direction really shows up. But most of the time, I think he's really good at understanding how to like maximize that space.
And that could be part of the catch radius thing that I'm talking about, just quickly adjusting to off target throws. And there were plenty from TCU. TCU has a fascinating receiver core. We'll talk about Savion Williams at some point later in the next 2 hours as well. So you have Bech at 8. I have him at 10. We both have the same number 9. If I recall, Ole Miss's Tre Harris.
Yeah.
And here's where we just discussed our anger with college offenses, not because they're bad, but because they're bad for evaluating. They're awesome for college football, though. Love Lane Kiffin.
Yeah. Hate the offense. Not as much as I hate Tennessee's offense, but pretty close. 6'2", 205 pounds. So this is the guy where you're like, now we've gone through a bunch of guys that are, you know, number 2 Z receivers, not on the line of scrimmage guys. This is the first guy for a while where you're like, I think Tre Harris can be your number 1 X receiver. This is someone that jumped out when, you know, when Ole Miss needed a play, it was tending to go to Tre Harris. Big, strong, maybe not super fast or dynamic, but like, you know, again, relative to the size, pretty good at it. Interestingly, apparently, he was Malik Neighbors' high school quarterback. Did you know that?
Did not know that.
Forget where I heard that, and I'm just assuming it's true because I heard it on the internet. But apparently, that's the case. For a guy that runs in that offense where it's not an NFL offense. The route tree is extremely Spartan. Doesn't do an awful lot of NFL things. I thought he had some really impressive route running nuance for given that situation and circumstances. His head fakes are really deceiving. Like, again, he's another guy that can attack a defensive back's leverage at the break. And then, I don't know, there's something about the way he head fakes where it has a disproportionate effect on the corners relative to normal head fakes, which I think DBs are pretty good at ignoring. But there's something about the way he does his head fakes that seems to completely flummox cornerbacks on a consistent basis.
Yeah, he's a tough one to break down because I wrote down death by a million hitches and goes, right? That is kind of the offense. If you want to watch a guy run, you know, the hitches, it's the Ole Miss offense, which is a derivative of the old Baylor offense, which
don't forget the smoke routes.
And your smoke routes, of course. I don't think he's great after the catch. I don't think he's that dynamic. He's got the build-up speed. But when you have that many deep ball opportunities in Ole Miss, there's enough opportunities to see you running by you know, defensive backs, and he's shown some of that. He ran 4.54, which is about what it feels like for 6'2", 205. That's a build-up speed type of guy. I don't think he's dynamic or twitchy, but he's got some of the downfield subtleties, as you said. I think the head fakes, I think the wins with his hands down the field. I always write that down when I see it. And he's got some of that as well. So to me, the question for this is, can you run the whole route tree? Because you haven't seen a ton of it. But from what you've seen, I think it's pretty good. I think he's got good hands overall, too, other than the LSU drop was pretty bad behind the defense. One of the really nice deep balls from Jackson Dart, and he just let it get into his gut and dropped it. But overall, I think he catches the ball pretty well.
Yeah, he's one of those guys. Every year it feels like there's some of these guys where it's like he's just solid at everything. And then that was my like initial take is I don't hate him, don't love him. He's just kind of in the middle. And then the more I watched of him, the more he grew on me. That offense is a nightmare to project from, which is a pain. But I do think that there's enough sort of NFL things on his tape already that you're keen on him, even with that context. I think his best attribute is probably that physicality at the catch point. Last year, he caught 61.5% of those contested catches. That's a really high number. Now, it's 48% for his career, which is still good, but that just shows you like the peril of betting on, the contested catch in any given year. It's just a noisy number that doesn't always translate. I don't think he's explosive, but he's good. He's pretty dynamic, and he's tough to bring down after the catch. Not that he's like super twitchy or super evasive, but he attacks weak shoulders, and at 6'2", 205, like you're a load to bring down. If you're gonna attack a weak shoulder of a safety, like you're probably gonna gain 5 yards after the catch or bust through an arm tackle. So I think again, pretty good at that, just not great.
The one other thing to look at for Tre Harris, 5 years of college football. So sometimes that works against you if you're a guy that's a little bit older, but very productive. And that's, weigh that how you want, but 3 yards per route run over the course of his career, really, really strong analytical profile. So, if that's one of the ways that you're evaluating receivers, that's going to be a box ticked for Tre Harris, probably even more. Like he's going to pop in analytical models that aren't necessarily adjusting for offense or for the fact that Ole Miss is helping there, but it is still at least a box ticked, I would say, for Tre Harris.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is again a lot of that offensive, or a lot of offenses like that tick that box, right? They're kind of manufacturing those crazy numbers for wide receivers at times. He's got he's the smokes, the smoke routes and the bubble screens and stuff are kind of funny because he literally doesn't move until the ball arrives. Like a lot of times, you see them give that jab step where they take the step back and they open the space. He literally just stands there and waits till the ball is like here and then sticks his hands up and goes. I haven't seen too many receivers do that before.
He's got some uniqueness to his game. So we both have anything else on Harris? We both have him at 9 in our top 10s here.
No, I think that's about everything I have on him. Again, I like him and wanted to push him higher because of the potential, but couldn't because that offense just scares me too much to be sure to push him any higher than that.
All right, so we've touched on all my top 10. I have Bech at number 10. Your number 10, though, Kyle Williams. So the one guy that I have in the top 10 that you don't have is Emeka Egbuka. I had Egbuka at 5. The one guy that you have in your top 10 that I don't is this guy, Kyle Williams from Washington State, who is on the ascent, Sam. Is he going to be high? If we did this 3 weeks from now, would he be even higher on your list? Kyle Williams, Washington State.
Yeah, I mean, again, I kind of wanted to push him higher in my top 10, but couldn't figure out which guy to drop him or drop for that to happen. We had Mike Renner on the show a couple of shows ago. He has Kyle Williams extremely high. Chris Sims since dropped his wide receiver rankings. He had him at wide receiver 2. And I'm not going to call it crazy because of last time where we thought he was crazy to have Brian Thomas ranked ahead of Marvin Harrison, and that looked pretty good now. But like Kyle Williams he's the best separator, I think, in this class. I would say that's the one, line summation of what he brings to the table. Instant separation, instant quickness, and in all ways, right? The routes at the break, the releases, they're all sick. Watch him at the Senior Bowl. He's operating at like a different speed to anybody trying to cover him. Like every step he makes, it's literally like a completely different speed to these guys. I thought he's got a vertical threat to him as well. He's not just you would comp him to somebody like Tez Johnson from Oregon, who's got that similar quickness, instant, looks like he's operating at a different pace to these other guys. But I think he's got a much more clean vertical profile to his game as well. He ran like a pretty fast 40. I don't have it to hand.
4.4. I think he was 4.4, 4.41.
So it's like, again, it's in the Matthew Golden true range, I think, which is fast enough to run a vertical route, not fast enough to like terrify everybody. Tracks the ball well, doesn't fight it. He's very good after the catch, not as shifty as Burden, but so direct and quick and fast, like can avoid a lot of tackles. The thing that kind of kept me from putting him much higher than that is, 5'11", 190, and you can see that relative lack of size on his tape quite a bit. Like he does get bodied a bit, both at the catch point. If there's a decent sized DB against him at the catch point, he's going to struggle a bit. And the separate. And during the route. So like the separation he gets is important, because if he doesn't get it, it's like an anchor dragging him down. It's like he goes through quicksand on those plays.
Yeah, Williams he's a real interesting prospect. And I think the only reason why I'm not putting him on the 10 in the top 10, because I see everything you're seeing on film. I mean, he is really shifty and slick as a route runner, and the Senior Bowl was eye-popping. I think his work at Washington State this year was eye-popping. I think I'm more leaning on the analytical profile that's questionable. So year 5 breakout for Williams. He was okay in previous years, 3 years at UNLV, and then okay in 2023 at Washington State. Washington State, he essentially played a Mountain West schedule in 4 out of his 5 years here, because Washington State was part of the Pac-2 or whatever they were last year, basically playing mostly a Mountain West type of schedule. So that matters a little bit from a production standpoint. So as a year, he's got one really good year in his year 5 season. He had the 14 touchdowns. I mean, spectacular film. So this reminds me a little bit of Xavier Legette, where you're separating, describing the skill set, what you see on film, and then going back and saying, okay, the totality, the body of work historically just doesn't project well at the next level. And that matters a little bit. I'm just going to rehash a conversation that we had last year when that stuff came up. Scott Barrett, who used to work for PFF, brought up the point. He was bringing the point up about Legette. He's like, scouts don't even look at this year 5 breakout stuff. And I was like, yeah, Scott, they don't, right? They're not, their job isn't necessarily to go back and understand analytical profiles. They're just describing the player and writing up a report. And if you did that in a vacuum for Kyle Williams, you would say this is a top 5 receiver in the draft, right? Size, good enough size, good speed, good separator, top 5 player. So a scout might do that, and Sims and Renner and you, like anybody can do that, and you put them there. But then the decision maker has to add in the other point in the analytical profile and the other pieces, and that's where I think there's a question. Year 5 breakout, competition level. Not that we didn't hold that against Jalen Royals, but that's a little different. It's a point to bring up here. So that'd be my concern on Kyle Williams. I really like the skill set and a lot of what he's done, but it doesn't have the profile for someone that projects highly at the next level.
Yeah, and that's, I think those are tricky, trying to figure out, like, okay, there's a historical trend of this not working out versus, like, does that apply to this guy, or why should we not care about it for this guy? I think, and it's a reason to be leery, I think, right? Like, I love what this guy's showing me right now, but this does not typically work out. Now, the other thing is, like, I'm always curious, because a lot of those are like year 5 breakout, right? And that's, well, what constitutes or what qualifies as the sort of threshold breakout? Because in his second year, he had, 2.2 yards per route run, had 600 plus yards. Like, it's not the 1,000-yard dominant breakout crushing, but it's a pretty good season, statistically. And then it went backwards a little bit. And then last year was by far his best year. So, but like, he's got multiple years.
I'm not even stealing anybody's. I have no idea if the other analytical community likes him, doesn't like him, if they're holding this against him. I don't know what his dominator rating is. I don't know. But I'm just eyeballing it, saying we've had one good year, and it took him till he was probably 22, 23 years old for it to happen. One really good year, and that does stand out to me.
Sure. But my point is, I'm curious how much do you need to see in the previous years before it's like not before it doesn't drag his dominator rating or whatever the statistical models are that kill guys for that 5th-year breakout stuff.
I don't know. I'm not running that against him. I'm just saying that's a piece of it. I like a lot of his game. I like his acceleration, smoothness in and out of breaks. He's another guy I don't know if he has the same feel as guys like Egbuka, Bech, some of those guys that I ranked ahead of him, have the same feel. I think a lot of his flashes are in the one-on-ones. I don't know if he has the same feel against zone and, the toughness over the middle, but drop rate's gotten better every season. They did manufacture some touches for him out of the backfield, which I think is notable, trying to get the ball to his hands at Washington State. So there's a lot to like about Kyle Williams. I wouldn't put him as high as some others, but he's on the ascent. I think Renner's going to have him. I don't know when Renner drops his final rankings, but he sent me a text today, said might be really high on Kyle Williams. And I get it. If I was looking at the film in isolation, I get it. I think there's parts of the whole body of work that I would be a little concerned about.
I mean, Renner's mad because he thought he would be the highest person on Kyle Williams throughout the process, and then Chris Sims puts him at number 2 in his rankings.
Sims went 2. He goes number 2. Oh, man. We have some, I don't even know, is this breaking news from Adam Schefter? Let's discuss really quick. People around the NFL feel that Aaron Rodgers may take the 2025 season off.
And come back next year?
I mean, you're not getting any younger, Aaron, but this could be, the saga continues. When do you think, Aaron, do you think he waits till round 1 draft night to announce his intentions?
I think he waits. I mean, from Rodgers' point of view, it would make sense to wait and figure out what the landscape looks like, right? The last thing he wants to do is to sign somewhere and then that team drafts Shedeur Sanders and now he's on a clock, which tends not to last more than like a month before they throw the rookie in there, right? He wants to be, let's wait and find what the best situation is, and then I'll go to that team.
I see you interacting with our listeners here. We're going to get, so those are our top 10s. By the way, our top 10s are out there. Why don't we recap the top 10s and we'll talk about the rest, the just missed and the rest of the sleepers. Give me your top 10 one more time.
Travis Hunter, number 1. Tetairoa McMillan, number 2. Luther Burden, number 3. Jalen Royals from Utah State, number 4. Jayden Higgins from Iowa State, number 5. Jaylin Noel from Iowa State, number 6. Matthew Golden from Texas, number 7. Jack Bech, number 8 to TCU wide receiver. Number 9, Tre Harris from Ole Miss. And then number 10, Kyle Williams from Washington State, leaving Emeka Egbuka at number 11 on the outside of my rankings. Looking in.
Oh, boy. So I got Travis Hunter, Tetairoa McMillan, and Luther Burden, your same top 3. Jayden Higgins from Iowa State, number 4. Emeka Egbuka, who you have at 11. I have him at 5, Ohio State. Iowa State's Jaylin Noel at 6. Utah State's Jalen Royals at 7. Texas's Matthew Golden at 8. Ole Miss, Tre Harris at 9. TCU's Jack Bech at 10. My 11, we'll start talking about some just misses here. But before we do that, give me 1 second. We have smarter listeners than the average podcast here, Sam. I don't want to hear it anymore. I don't want to hear about this guy you missed on this receiver. And I saw Renner has a lot of whiffs. Come on, let's be smarter than this, people. I've evaluated, I think when you hold the player evaluating hits to a high standard, you could say a hit rate at most positions is like 10 to 15%. I'm talking like hitting on above average players at each position. And if we use that as the standard, everybody's going to have a lot of misses, right? Don't tell me, oh, you missed this one player or you missed that. Don't tell me that, because literally everybody does. Understand the baseline before you start saying, oh, I'm never going to listen to Renner because he missed on this one player. I'm never going to listen to Steve because he was lower on Brian Thomas Jr. or whatever it might be. Come on, we all have to be smarter than that, and then multiply that by 10 when it comes to QBs. Soapbox, done.
Yeah, I mean, so, I posted Chris Sims' wide receiver rankings the other day, and I'm like, before everyone dumps on him for trolling and, being ridiculous and just engagement farming, remember what he did last year, which is he posted that Brian Thomas Jr. was better than Marvin Harrison Jr. at the time where that was seen as utterly crazy, including we were calling him out for that being crazy. Now, with hindsight, it seems fine. But at the time, even though he was consensus wide receiver 4, Marvin Harrison Jr. was being talked about as generational and, clearly number 1. And then there was maybe Neighbors is better. But to put Brian Thomas Jr. above Harrison at that point was nuts. And he did it. And after a year, he looks like a genius for it. So I posted last year's wide receiver rankings. Remember, this is what he did last year. It looks genius now, right? And even then, people are like, he's got Roman Wilson above Ladd McConkey, idiot. It's see, even with the one where you're like, look, he's got this one genius point that almost nobody else had. I'm sure there was somebody, but this took incredible going against the grain to put this particular ranking in this order. The thing anyone's focused on is, but he had Roman Wilson above Ladd McConkey. So even in this rankings, he's an idiot. It's you can't, literally you can't win. Nobody has the correct rankings. Nobody.
No. People are calling him out for having Roman Wilson over Ladd McConkey.
Yes. Even though Roman Wilson missed, the whole year injured or whatever. But the point is McConkey's not on his top 5. Therefore, he's still an idiot, even though he made one of the best essentially calls of anybody's draft rankings.
In addition to vertical rankings just being dumb, right? If there's better ways to evaluate these things. But here we are. Let's finish our vertical rankings. So you had Egbuka at 11, just missing. My just miss. Yeah. Kyle Williams, and I had Kyle Williams at 12. I threw some numbers down. But 11, I got to mention our guy Tez Johnson. I got Tez Johnson at 11 because I still believe he's going to be a productive player. Bucky Irving had a bad combine last year. Bucky Irving ran slow, bad combine. Watch the film. He's quick. He's great. He's best running back from the draft class last year so far. And Tez Johnson, I still believe in him as a player. Right. And so he's a different player than Troy Franklin, who we were higher on last year coming out of Oregon. Completely different player. But Tez Johnson ran slow, didn't have a great workout. The dude just looks fast and quick on the field. You got to use him in probably some gimmick stuff, but I think he can do more than the gimmick stuff as well. Somewhere in not full Tank Dell, but man, you could get a little bit more of a vertical threat out of Tez Johnson as well, more than even Oregon used him. So I like Tez Johnson still, so I have him at 11.
Yeah, I have him a bit lower than that, but I'm with you. He's another guy where I'm like, I don't really care what the measurable said. Like, you watch the tape, you watch the Senior Bowl footage, and again, Senior Bowl is kind of set up for one-on-ones to win with the wide receivers, but the two guys that were consistently untouchable, almost literally, were Kyle Williams and Tez Johnson. Tez Johnson was putting people in a blender all the way through the week. Nobody could stick with him. Like, he is scary small. 5'9", 155 pounds is like 0th percentile in anything. Like, he's basically going to be the smallest player on the field every single time he steps foot on an NFL field. But he gains separation as well as anybody. Like, maybe the best in this class. If Kyle Williams is number 1, he's 1A. He does get elite separation, and as long as he holds up physically, if he survives the NFL, I agree. I think he will be. There's a role for him. It may be limited to that slot gimmick, whatever. And I agree. I think he may be able to do more. But even I'm almost certain he has that role available to him, and that's useful.
We'll get to some of the players being mentioned in the chat. The top consensus board receiver that we have not mentioned yet is Emeka Egbuka from Stanford. He's number 8 on the consensus board. He's 8, and Isaiah Bond is 10 from Texas. Those are the two players we haven't mentioned yet. Neither made our top 10. Where are you on Egbuka from Stanford? Don't need a number necessarily, but how close is he to your top 10, or what are your thoughts on him generally?
They're both in the next 5.
Yeah.
I didn't concrete that order. I didn't set that order hard and fast because I knew we were only doing a top 10 and then just naming some guys that we need to talk about. I think he's 6'2", 206 pounds from Stanford. His big thing, his big calling card is in 2023, he absolutely barbecued Travis Hunter when they played Colorado. He put up 294 total yards, 133 of which and 2 touchdowns came against Travis Hunter. So 7 catches for 133 and 2 touchdowns against Hunter. And 2 of the incompletions were drops. So it would have been even bigger. He absolutely destroyed him, including there was a monster downfield play where he just absolutely annihilated him. He also had it was the game winner, right? He bodied him and did the whole prod throw type of catch, around Travis Hunter, just absolutely annihilated him. So it's it's almost like the transitive properties, right? It's like Travis Hunter, if he's the best corner in the draft, well, this guy barbecued the best corner of the draft when they went head to head in 2023. Ergo, he should be an elite prospect, et cetera, et cetera. But that represents by far and away his high watermark as a college player.
And let me add some context to that. Going into that game, he had fewer than 200 yards, or right around 200 career yards. And then I think it was a Friday night game. He goes off for 294. So yeah, that, radar's up. This looks like a future NFL prospect. And by the way, that's one of the games when you're looking at Travis Hunter's draft stock and you're saying, oh, this guy's not good in man. You're looking at this game against Stanford that says, oh, he's not going to play a ton of man coverage. And look, it was bad. It was bad for Hunter. It was outstanding for Egbuka. apparently is the correct pronunciation there. Appreciate it. My notes on him are like the opposite of all the receivers that I like, which is I don't think he's good at any of the subtle receiver things. I don't think he's good. He's actually not great at the catch point, using his body, but I think he's big, plays big, feels bigger than 6'2", 206 to me. He's big and moves pretty well. So I think there's a ton of potential there. I think there's a lot of potential.
I think he plays big in both a good and a bad way, right? I think you're right. He plays bigger than 6'2", 206, but I also think he plays bigger than 6'2", 206 when it comes to like route running. I don't think he can sink his hips particularly well. You talked about that deceleration thing being really important. It seems to be a drag for him sometimes, like throwing on an anchor and then waiting for him to slow down. Like, I don't know that his change of direction, his escape from the jam, like physical press coverage at the line, I don't know of any of that yet. I mean, I think he's a work in progress. Like, this is somebody that had like a sprinter background. Like, there's a lot of skills there to like, but yeah, I think he's quite raw at the moment.
Yeah. So that's what it is. He's raw. So I wouldn't take him as high. So 6'2", 206, ran a 4.44, pretty good jumps. Yeah. I think he's a raw prospect, ball skills, tracking.
Yeah.
He could get better at all the things that I think and he might have a higher ceiling than all of them because of this, because we haven't seen him do it yet. Maybe a little Jonathan Mingo-ish from a couple of years ago, where there's some size, there's some speed, but there's some rawness there. So that's where I would put him. So he's in that 11 to 15 range for me as well. Who else in that?
Bond,
and Isaiah Bond. I mean, I thought Bond looked, first note, moves differently, just fast, quick, looked way more athletic than Golden. Not trying to trash Golden again, but just looked different on the field. I want to start, before you discuss Bond's skill set though, Sam, multiple reports. We're in Jermaine Burton off-field territory is what I've heard across multiple sources. Burton was a big, one of our bits last year, because I was saying, yes, I put him at wide receiver 4 because I'm saying I know that there's off-field there, but I'm just trying to make a point that I really like this guy as a player. Obviously, the off-field mattered a ton for him last year with Cincinnati. Hate to put that on any player. I'm just reporting back what we've heard across multiple sources. Isaiah Bond, who was in many top 10s for a while, he's falling, and I don't know how much of that is off-field, but we're hearing, similar. Wasn't great across Alabama and Texas, much like Burton wasn't great across Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah, and even just looking at that combine 40-time debacle, I mean, ultimately it doesn't mean anything, but it makes him look like an idiot, right? Like, summing it up, I mean, he said he was going to be the fastest guy at the combine. He was going to break the record. He might run a 4.1. And to be fair, he's got like sprinting pedigree. I mean, this is a dude that was a 1 and 200 meter state champion, way back in the day. That's like legit. He's got a 10.5 100-meter time, I think. Like, that's fast. Yes. So it makes sense. And it means that he knows how to start. So it's not like, he's a fast guy who doesn't know how to run a 40. Like, he should have run a fast 40. And his visibly, he's fast, twitchy as hell. Like, on the field, he looks fast as hell, which again is why you put him next to Matthew Golden right now. I would bet money Bond beats him. But to make all that noise before you run the 40 and then run like a 4.39, which is fast, but like, a lot of people run a 4.39, just makes you look like a moron, right? It does. There's no way around it. And maybe it was a bad day, but he then did it at Texas and didn't run any faster. So again, you just look stupid. And when you start putting that next to this idea of, look, there's a lot of talk behind the scenes that he's kind of an asshole, it all starts to build this unfortunate picture. I don't know, right? Like, it's all secondhand information. It's hearsay. On the field, I really like his tape. I mean, he reminded me a lot of Jalen Waddle, and it wasn't until I went back and started watching Alabama tape that I saw he wore the same number at Alabama. Like, I was saying that before I saw him wearing the same number, looking like the same player at Alabama. But he's got like fast, quick twitch, like, 100th percentile apparently in 1 year at Alabama in PFF gas, like literally as athletic as it gets on the field in terms of measurable stuff. He's a yards after the catch threat because of that quickness and that burst. He's not going to bust through too many tackles, but like, anytime a guy is that twitchy and, has that kind of explosion, he will barbecue man coverage because of that quickness and that speed. Like, it's so hard to stay with him because you don't have people that can run like that.
Run
I
him
don't think he has the
over routes all day, right? I mean, like he runs the speed routes really well.
Right. I don't think, we talked about this before, the feel for zone. I don't think he has that yet. The stuff that Jack Bech is really good at. I don't think Bond is particularly good at that at all. Doesn't have the feel for zone, doesn't have the reading skills for the shell that he's looking at that other people do. Has to keep like looking back for where the soft spot is. Where should I be settling? Like, it doesn't have that picture in his head and understand like ahead of time where he is. He's sort of constantly reading it on the fly, which means he can be a little late to react to things. I don't know if he has the physicality to survive outside consistently, even though that quickness and the speed plays. But man, like the other thing that stood out as I felt like his catch radius is pretty tight because he's a pretty small, compact guy, can jump, like he's got hops, but it's not like he's gonna catch things that are way off target for him. I mean, if you told me that he wasn't a lunatic, right? If somebody that I trust gave me a really favorable scouting report on the kind of the attitude and work ethic and all that kind of stuff, I could easily be convinced that he belongs like firmly in the top 10 and maybe even higher than Golden from the same offense. But knowing that there's at least rumors about that, there's enough to be scared about that I'm going to keep him outside of the top 10.
Oh yeah, I mean, the description I had on Jaylin Noel, maybe minus the ball skills part, but all the speed stuff, good speed receiver for me. Vertical threat, run the over routes, do all the stuff. But yeah, the off field that we've heard isn't great with Isaiah Bond. What other? I mean, I have another list. I have a whole bunch of receivers that I just want to talk about or at least mention here.
Yeah. Let's just start throwing some names that we need to at least have a conversation about, and then let's wrap it up with a sleeper each.
Okay, Xavier Restrepo.
Oh, okay.
I still love him as a football player from Miami. Ran a 4.83 at his pro day. He is a pure slot. Always seemed to make the big catch, adjust to balls. I mean, he looks slow. In my notes, I said he ran a 4.7. I saw Sumer Sports come out and say that by their tracking data, they had him at 4.63. He ran a 4.83 and then assured everyone that he was running in the low 4.5s in training, but he was hurt. I mean, either way, I think he's slow. He's slow and he's kind of weird body. What's his dimensions? You always like to describe.
He was under 5'10", so he was 5'9" and like 7/8 or whatever. He's exactly the same height as Tez Johnson, right? But he's 209 pounds at that height. So he outweighs Tez Johnson at exactly the same height. They were the same 1/8 of an inch. He outweighs him by 55 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, athletically, it's just not there. But I'll just read my notes because I think this is what he is. Good feel for getting open, methodical route runner, understands spacing and timing. Like, he is the quintessential slot receiver. I wrote down there are some Cooper Kupp vibes, but Kupp had much better football speed. He's got spatial awareness, picks, rubs, sets him up, small catch radius. I mean, he is the quintessential slot receiver in the Welkery type of mode, right? Quicker than fast, understands how to play football. And then from Miami's perspective, when they needed a big play, Xavier Restrepo is usually the guy making the play. So how do you value that? And like a 4.83 is like out of this world slow. Yeah. Even if he's 4.7, he's on the cusp. But like, you don't need to run that fast out of the slot. The problem I run into is there's not a lot of offenses that have this type of slot receiver that can't get vertical. We've been describing all of the slots and the tight split receivers that we want to run vertically, and he can't do that very well. So there's not a lot of offenses that just have this role, even though I think he's really good at the role that he could fill.
That's part of the problem. Is that's one of the reasons sort of that specific skill set has never been as valuable as others, is because there's not every team has that, right? Like Wes Welker would not have been Wes Welker in every NFL offense. The Patriots carved a Wes Welker role for him, and he absolutely crushed it in that system. Not everybody has one of those, and so that guy just ends up being. I mean, remember Wes Welker with the Dolphins? He'd flash some stuff, but he was like a return guy who also dabbled at wide receiver. And then the Patriots like, dude, we can turn that into a steal. Let's trade for him in a restricted free agent type of deal. Like not everybody has one of those, so the value is low. The Restrepo thing is so strange because like Tez Johnson didn't have a good workout, but he didn't have a bad workout. Xavier Restrepo, you need to throw out effectively every single physical benchmark you would have in order to draft him, right? Height, he's too small. Weight in and of itself is weird because 209 should not exist on a 5'10" frame. He's built like a running back, right? He's not built like a wide receiver. You watch him walk around, his thighs are like tree trunks. He's a running back's body. Only that doesn't help him with the 40 because 4.8 is slow for a running back as well. I was texting Renner about him, and we were like, it's like, remember Elijah Holyfield, who 40-timed himself out of the NFL? Georgia running back, son of Evander Holyfield, and then ran a 4.8 or whatever, and it was never heard from again. But like the 40 time is abysmal. The short shuttle was bad, not abysmal bad, but bad. His arms are really short as well. Like every single physical measurement you care about, you have to junk it if you want to draft Restrepo.
The catch radius thing matters because even think about Welker and think about the number of times the NFL wanted to replicate Welker when they saw somebody that had that skill set. They're like, hey, let's bring this guy in. But remember, Welker had success with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, right? Dudes who were going to put the ball accurately on him. Like balls that were, I mean, Welker had the drop in the Super Bowl. I think it was a drop that would have ended the game. Like anything off frame, he wasn't catching a whole lot. You needed a super accurate quarterback and running that offense. So I love Restrepo as a player. It's almost like trying to fit a fullback into today's NFL. I just don't know. And there's a lot, every team uses 3 wide receivers. They just don't use the slot receiver in that type of way. So had to mention Restrepo. You could throw some names out as well. I've got some others as well.
We need to talk about Savion Williams, the other TCU wide receiver. Receiver. So 6'4", 222 pounds. But he's this hybrid. He's this Cordero Patterson hybrid wide receiver running back that we don't know quite what to do with. But he is big, fast, dynamic ball carrier. Like I can't quit players like this. The NFL doesn't know what to do with them, and they almost always fail because of it. And yet I watch him play football, and I want that guy on my team.
He is Jim Nagy, before he left the Senior Bowl, made the Cordero Patterson comp, and I think it's
I think it's too obvious not to.
I think it's perfect, man. And back in the day, this was I was maybe just started with PFF when what was Patterson, class of 2012 or 11 or whatever it was. I mean, I thought he was going to be special, but I wasn't looking at him through the nuanced route running and different things that he didn't necessarily have. I mean, Savion, to me, he doesn't have any of that. Again, all of the players in this class that I've liked, route running, nuance, they catch the ball effectively. He's got a high contested catch rate and a high drop rate, right? So many of the players that we've described in this class are high at both. Savion is just good in the contested catches, drops a lot of passes, not a lot of wide receiver nuance to his game. They put him in the backfield, and you're right. I mean, they liked him enough to put him in the backfield and give him carries. Most of them were toss plays, which is interesting too. So I think that's good and bad, right? He's 6'4", 222. You probably don't want that dude running through between the tackles. But so I don't know that he could do that. I don't think he's going to do that at the next level, but they're getting him the ball. He's really good with the ball in his hands. He's explosive. And they were trying to he had like 60 carries last year and a lot straight up from the backfield. That is a unique skill set, obviously.
His burst is elite. His lateral quickness is sick. His contested catches were amazing. Like, I think he might be better at that than Cordero Patterson was. Now, he also has some drops in there as well. His hands generally feel kind of iffy, which is not great in terms of, are you a wide receiver? Are you a running back? Again, the route running isn't there. Doesn't have a plan to set up defensive backs. I don't know how well he reads coverages either. I love what get the ball in his hands, and I love that. Now, the problem with that is it's just the track record of those guys, right? Like, Cordero Patterson's interesting because once you made him a running back, he was actually a very good player. But by the time people did that, it was so late into his career that it was almost like we've wasted this. You know what I mean? I sort of feel like if he'd had his career, if we started over with Cordero Patterson now and people knew what he was, I think he'd be a better NFL player. But I also think like Treylon Burks fits into this category a lot as well, right? He was more of an athlete than he was a player at Arkansas, and they got the ball into his hands every possible way. They lined him up as a a wildcat quarterback. They had him in the backfield. They had him line up a tight end in the slot, out wide, everywhere. And it's like, that's great because it means, they want to get the hand they're going to get the ball in the hands of their best playmaker. But it also means you don't have a position right now. And generally speaking, the NFL is not good at just taking an athlete and doing that. College can do that because the athlete is generally so much superior than everybody else that, yeah, you can line him up in 6 different spots on the offense and he can do all of them. The NFL, it doesn't tend to work that way. So this is the thing, right? The dichotomy of my personality, the half that watches him with the ball in his hands wants that guy on my football team. The half of me that understands that if he doesn't have a position and he can't be one position, he's probably not going to work because the NFL just stinks at using those guys.
It's interesting though. Look, he's just not polished enough as a receiver for me to rank him high on the receiver list. And I don't know if I want to be the team that tries to figure out how to make the most of him. But if you can handle maybe 2 or 3 years of development time, maybe you do make him a running back. I think there's maybe a few teams that are, looking at him for their running back room. But I used to say this about Tebow when everybody's like, "Oh, bring Tebow in as a short yardage back," and it's like, well, he has to be better than the actual running backs to make that work, And I don't think he's that. And make him a tight end. Well, he's not better than the actual tight end. So then what is he? Savion in a deep running back class has to be better than some of the running backs. If that's what you like him as, he has to be better than these more polished receivers. So he's a project. He's a project in, 11 to 15, 20 range, depending on where you want to value that. Ty Felton from Maryland. Saw the chat, bring him up. There are, I think all of the sub 440 guys need probably at least a mention. There's 10 guys who ran sub 4.44 at the combine. Ty Felton's one of them. I think he's the speed receiver that maybe doesn't have the same kind of physicality as a Jaylin Noel. Had a really nice Senior Bowl though, Felton. So I got some Tyquan Thornton vibes. Baylor second round, Patriots second rounder, who I thought should have been more of a fourth rounder. So Felton also started the year really hot, was like the nation's leading receiver 4 or 5 weeks into the season. Slowed down as the season went on. So there's stuff to work with there, especially what you saw at the Senior Bowl as a potential deep threat for me.
Let's get the sleepers out of the way so we know who's left to talk about.
Okay. I mean, if we're talking sleepers, I've seen this guy's name mentioned in the chat before, but Dante Thornton from Tennessee. That's the guy. That's the guy I want to go to bat for. One of the guys who ran for sub 4.4. Let's have the Dante Thornton discussion right now. Let's get it out of the way, man. Let's get it going. Dante Thornton is 6'5". He runs a 4.3. No one's ever done that. No one does that type of thing. Dante Thornton. He's the closest thing to DK Metcalf. Dante Thornton. And I'm surprised by this. I did one-play scouting. I tweeted out there yesterday. I was scouting Billy Bowman, Oklahoma safety, and I watched this play where Dante Thornton catches the ball over the middle. He's 6'5", and he outruns everybody. I was like, whoa, let's see what's up with that dude. Averaging 25 per catch or whatever he did at Tennessee in that ridiculous offense. And I thought, okay, big speed, not a ton of production, probably doesn't have much polish to his game. I was personally pleasantly surprised by how well he moved outside of the straight line speed, how well he sunk his hips for 6'5" for a 4.3 guy, how well he got in and out of his breaks, and how well he caught the ball, right? There's an ugly paddle-handed drop, whatever you call it, right? Terrible drop in there. But overall, on scramble drills, tracking the ball down the field, I kind of liked his ball skills. So Dante Thornton at 6'5", running a 4.3 with some ancillary skills that are not awful that you usually see for that type of skill set. I am intrigued. Dante Thornton, he's the guy I'm taking a shot on as my wide receiver 4, deep threat, run the DK route tree, run the go, run the post, run a slant. Dante Thornton's my dude.
Yeah. So, okay. We have to obviously start this conversation with the selling point is obvious, right? 6'5", 200 plus pounds, blazing fast, like freakish speed, height, weight, speed combination, right? So that's the selling point. Now the negative is And, 3.72 yards per route run, like really high average per catch, all these kinds of things. So like, it looks like an explosive, vertical, like dynamic threat. Now, the flip side of that is he came out of this Tennessee offense, which we've described before. For college, it's a great offense. For the purposes of projecting players into the NFL, it is hateful and useless. And you might as well be projecting athletes from a different sport, right? The IPP had their international player pathway. They had their pro day, yesterday. You might as well be grabbing players from that, right? Like super athlete, he played basketball. He could probably play wide receiver. It's basically the same thing, right? It's completely abstract concepts because the offense is so far removed from anything you're going to do. He's in an acre of space the whole time. He's one-on-one with a guy with like 30 yards of room around him. It doesn't matter what he's doing. He's probably going to win. It's just not, you can't project it. It's like it's projecting a couple of traits, right? The height, weight, speed, and we've seen he can catch based off, targets that did go his way. But you can't, like, none of that is an NFL offense. So like Jalen Hyatt, you're like, I like what he's doing, but I don't know what happens when you ask him to do regular NFL wide receiver things. Now, what is intriguing is, like you said, there's a way to just give him a DK Metcalf game plan and say, even if you never progress beyond this, you can run these three things, and those three things have a value for us right now. So if he runs nothing but goes, slants, and, catches a couple of smoke screens every now and again, there's some value to that. We can get use out of that. If that plays at the next level, I'm all for it. So I'm definitely, like, I would be hugely intrigued by Dante Thornton on day 3 as a high upside, let's give it a shot deal.
Yeah. And look, I texted some people about him, and it's like, well, he doesn't have special teams value. And usually if you're going to be that developmental receiver, you have to have special teams value. I get it. I'm not building a team right now. I'm just looking at what could he be. I want the team that I build, though, I want wide receiver 4 to be a take the top off the defense type of option. I don't know if I've seen a better one in recent years than what he can become, right? So that's my high upside play is Dante Thornton. I have some other receivers that I like as well, but give me we doing multiple sleepers here? I got a few to bring up. Go ahead.
I only got the one. So, okay, my one, Torrey Horton from Colorado State.
Nice. Yeah.
I loved him. So again, he was on, I was looking at his tape last year and I was like, this guy is really good. Why is nobody talking about him for the draft? Like, why have I uncovered this prospect and nobody's talking about it? And the reason nobody was talking about it is because he went back to college and was in this draft instead of last year's draft. So put a pin in it, came back to it, watched this tape again. I still really like Torrey Horton. He's 6'2", 180 pounds. So he's kind of rangy, long, has got this weird style where he kind of looks like he's jogging through everything, but he kind of motors. I mean, his PFF gas, the game athleticism score, like 98th percentile, 78th percentile this most recent season where he got injured. But he's got so that offense was kind of frustrating. I don't think I've ever seen a player who has a higher percentage of his targets come on shallow drags across the middle. It felt like there was a sequence. I was watching all of his targets in a row where there was like 6 straight plays where they were all shallow drags across the middle. I was like, I must have a filter on. This can't possibly be every single target sequentially that he had in the last 2 games. This is insane. So there's a lot of that. And you got to strip back some of this stuff and figure out, okay, what happens when we're actually, running more than one route. But he's got this really nice sideways juke in the open field on those shallow drags, like running sideways. Somebody's coming towards him and just basically jumps a foot to his right or left. And the guy's grasping at air, kind of bounces laterally to make these people miss. But I think he's got good hands, good ball skills, even though he's got one of those horrible Troy Franklin drops. Literally, just as I was like, he's got really good ball skills, like stone-handed drop deep behind the defense. That was kind of annoying. Not massively physical. In fact, not very physical at all. I make this comp. I need a more up-to-date comp, but I make this comp all the time for receivers that catch the ball, get what they can, and then realize the only way this ends now is with contact and they hit the ground, right? That's my Isaac Bruce comp. Maybe Tyler Lockett is a more up-to-date modern comp, but he does that a lot, right? Where he's like, okay, I've got what's available. Now let's just hit the turf before I get hurt. I think he's got good hands. There's some similarities to his game to Troy Franklin from a year ago, which makes me a little bit twitchy now that Troy Franklin didn't hit the ground running in the NFL. And, we loved Troy Franklin last year. It didn't work out yet. So
I didn't like Franklin's film
No, that's true. But your model liked him.
The numbers liked him. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm that has me backing away from the Torrey Horton thing a little bit, but I do like him a lot. And again, as a sleeper, I like him a lot.
Yeah, I like Horton too. When he did run vertical routes, I thought his footwork was fantastic. He's 6'3". I mean, footwork in and out of breaks, I thought was outstanding. Honestly, I think I'm a Horton fan as well. I think he's closer to the top 10. I mean, he's in the 11, 12, 13 mix for me, even more than a guy like Savion Williams that I think you might have to jump through hoops for to figure out a role. So I like Horton quite a bit. I thought that's a good shout. He's on my just missed-ish list as well. Any other names you want to shout out? I'm just going to spit a few takes beyond this, but any other names that you just want to make sure that we touch on?
Well, as the chat points out, if we don't mention Illinois' Pat Bryant, Walt's going to cry.
I'll just read my Pat Bryant notes because he is a good football player, but he's slow. I mean, he ran 4.6. He felt like 4.6. Smooth body control and adjustments. I don't see the twitch or dynamism. I actually had good eyes watching the film there. He did refuse to go down on one of his touchdowns early in the season. So he got a little grit, stick-to-itiveness, and pretty good in the contested situations. I think he's just a good all-around football player, running 4.6. It's probably the hindrance there for Pat Bryant.
Yeah, he's like that outside X receiver who doesn't have the speed, which is, I mean, it can work, but that's definitely a restriction from how good those guys can be, I think. But yeah, I think overall there's a lot to like about his game.
Trying to see if I've got any other. Yeah, I mean, he's a good. I would take a shot on Pat Bryant's day 3. You're weighing that. I would weigh that against. He's a productive player that has a chance to have success versus, I would say, weighing the upside of like the 4.3 guy. Like if I'm choosing between Pat Bryant's good football player and what Dante Thornton could become, I would try to swing for the fences for a Dante Thornton. That's where I'm
at. Same. I mean, I don't even think so. This is where I get into the Jimmy Johnson world, right? Of just taking guys I like. I don't think I have a consistent, like, there are guys that I love because of the traits and the Dante Thorntons. Let's chase the upside. But there are also guys where I'm willing to just throw out the numbers and say, I don't even care what this guy tested like. I think he's really good. I'm taking him. So
I still think you're misinterpreting the Jimmy Johnson line.
How am I misinterpreting it?
It's like the highest grade, like it's the best players in that range is just taken. Like
that's not what the thing said. Like I'm not misrepresenting what was put. They may be misrepresenting what he did, but that's not what the statement said.
Players I like can be, I don't know, doesn't matter. Other names you want to throw out there. I see Chimera DK. There's all the sub 4.4 guys. They're all intriguing deep threats. Keandre Lambert-Smith, I've seen him get some love around circles because he's a little bit bigger, ran 4.37 out of Auburn. He did have some freak plays on there. It was painful to watch at times at Auburn with the QB play, as always, when watching college receivers, but he's got some skills. Arian Smith from Georgia ran 4.36, felt that speed. He had maybe the worst drop rate in college football last year, but also I saw like the Senior Bowl results were pretty good, but he also like fell over a bunch. So every time I'm like, sure, I see it with Arian Smith. It's like he's dropping the ball or he's falling over. So do what you want with that. I've seen Jalen Lane from Virginia Tech get some love. Again, another deep threat type that I think a bunch of those guys are missing the physicality aspect of it, which is why I put Thornton above the size and physicality, whereas all the other guys are like a little bit slighter. DK, Lane, Arian Smith, Ty Felton, a little bit slighter bodies, and the physicality at the catch point affects them more, for their speed.
One other guy, I would throw him out as a bit of a sleeper as well. I really liked Jimmy Horn Jr. from Colorado, one of those other Colorado wide receivers. They obviously had Travis Hunter as wide receiver 1 in addition to cornerback 1. Jimmy Horn's good. Like that guy, he's pretty small. Like he's slight. Like that. There's not the kind of room to pack on. Like he's slight and small in addition to just some of these other guys are short, but they're pretty stocky. He's slight and small, but he's good. He's got good route running, understands zones. Like it's tough. Like he'll take shots over the middle. I think his relative lack of production is because Colorado shared it around. Like they actually did a pretty good job of distributing the ball around, which is probably a reflection on Shedeur Sanders that probably isn't getting enough recognition. I think Jimmy Horn is going to become a pretty useful player at the next level.
Because I'm looking at one of the other Colorado receivers, LeJohntay Wester. I mean, I mentioned on the QB show yesterday, that dude to me stole the show every single time I watched. Underneath routes, deep routes, had the Hail Mary catch. I loved LeJohntay Wester every time I watched Shedeur Sanders in particular.
That I don't want to name names in case he's backed off that opinion since tweeting it out there, but like I've seen people suggest that Colorado's receiving core it was just Hunter. You know, that's why he's forcing the ball to Hunter. I thought they were all good. Like that, all those guys are good. I don't know why. As I said, somebody put it out as like, oh, it's basically Travis Hunter and then nobody else. I think that entire receiving core was pretty useful.
I completely agree. I think they were very good. As bad as the offensive line was, that's how good the receiving core was. How's that for Colorado? I see Andrew Armstrong's name from Arkansas being listed here. I was surprised. I don't think he got invited to any All-Star games. He's slow, feels slow, looks slow. He ran 4.5 at 6'4". He doesn't feel dynamic, but the dude knows how to win. High production in Arkansas's offense. I like Andrew Armstrong as a sleeper. I want to mention Nick Nash from San Jose State, Bolitnikoff finalist. He had like 30 targets in one game. Like he was a high volume target guy that went to school with our very own Will Serio. Got to mention Nick Nash and Will over here. So Nash as a day 3 type of sleeper, really productive receiver out of San Jose.
That's right. The fitness in the chat points out that Horn had the fastest top speed through the gauntlet drill.
He did.
He showed up pretty high, I think, in a lot of the miles per hour like combine drill numbers.
The scouts I was sitting near, I believe, were West Coast scouts because every player they were like, hey, it was all West Coast players, and there was like a Horn's looking good today. Like some nudges, maybe from a Steelers scout, some nudges from a Steelers West Coast scout, maybe about Jimmy Horn. That's it's my dirt from the scouting section of the combine that I snuck into.
Yeah, I think he's got real skills. It's just he's not that big.
Drake, Ricky White from UNLV. I did try to cram watch Ricky White. He popped a few, like Syracuse game, Boise State, I think, but like Syracuse in particular, he was a go-to guy for UNLV. Made some huge plays when they needed it. Blocked like 4 punts, I believe. Made one of the 90+ special teams grade last year per PFF. Ricky White. I was a little disappointed in the receiver tape though when I watched him. I thought I was going to find him as more of a sleeper. Didn't feel special in any of the receiver skills that I wanted, but he can make a name as a special teamer and day 3 type of pick. So throw Ricky White out there. And there was one other name I think I was going to mention before we wrap this thing up.
Can't possibly be more names. We're out. It's 2.5 hours.
Is that it? Elijah Badger. Elijah Badger from Florida. The 2 Florida guys, Chimera Dike as the 4.3 speed guy, and then Badger. Some people are high on Elijah Badger. Really productive receiver, though. Again, if you're taking a day 3 productive receiver, averaged over 20 yards per catch last year, was the recipient of some DJ Lagway dimes over at Florida. Badger had a really nice season. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Is that everybody?
Yeah, let's wrap.
You ranked 27 receivers a couple of years ago as I looked through the...
it's supposed to be a top 10, so we should probably stop naming people.
All right, that's it. Receivers are ranked. QBs are ranked. Go check them out if you didn't see yesterday's episode. We'll be back again Monday. We're doing a 2-round mock draft Monday. Enjoy draft season. Enjoy happy opening day, Sam, and the basketball tournament thing. And we'll see if I can get on the field. I'll tweet it out if I make it onto the field to see the Giants take BP on Saturday. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again on Monday with more Check the Mic.